Bullshit, I can't hear you. Sound off like you got a pair.
R&O Gumby cheered 5 bits and says, Dad's Little Pecker by Holden Wiener.
Damn it, Gumby. What's up, man? Wait, that's a real book? No. 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 Lord, it is a real book. Yeah, I'm looking at the link right now. This is... I don't know how to feel about this book. Alright. Hang on one sec. I just realized I didn't restart the screen share. Let me get that going. And then we'll get started for tonight. What's up, everyone? Hope you're all having a wonderful, wondiferous, freaking murderous Wednesday. Yeah, that's a word. I just made it up. There we go. What's up, everybody? This is the book Gumby had linked over. Dad's a Little Pecker. Written and illustrated by Holden Weiner. Dad has a little pecker. He plays with it all day. He takes it with him everywhere and puts it on display. Mom loves it, but she doesn't understand why he always has to have the little pecker in hand. Oh, God. Oh, dude. Hold on. So what other books do they have? They have the Christmas version. A one about a troll is eating my ass. Poor donkey. And then Nice Rack. The Legend of Tammy. Oh, God. Well, that's a nice way to kick off the news night. I hope everybody's having a fantastic week. I am thoroughly getting my my lack of sleep game into full swing because it is reporting week. And reporting is always the beat down of the job. That's the one thing they don't talk to you about. Like, hey, when you start working in offensive securities doing the report writing, oh, man, it's such a beat down. And unfortunately, I think we might have mentioned this last week, but the Bad Sectors Labs blog is going on break. It's fine. From what I hear, it's a good reason why I think the author, Eric, and his wife are expecting their first child. So that's awesome news. And he's been doing this for a long time. So pretty cool. He does have a list of different blog sources down here if you want to go check those out. But we've been collecting them over on Discord. So we've got a nice list of ones set up here. Great read for the kiddos. No, I'm not reading that to my kids. They ask far too many questions. Far too many questions. And Honey Badger's actually really good at reading. My mom tried to convince me that, oh no, he's just memorized it and he's regurgitating. I was like, no, Mama, you don't understand. He sees random signs that I have never read to him, that my wife has never read to him, that nobody has read to him out in the world as we're driving in the car. And he's just, boop, that says, in his cute little voice. And I'm like, yeah, no, he did not memorize that. Oh, Potion, was that the phishing site that got sent to you? Yeah, we have taken some of them apart on stream before. I don't know if I feel like that. We've got actually a fairly busy news night. My goodness, the news around security and AI stuff just never lets up. And I hate to say it, I don't think it's going to slow down anytime soon. So actually, I was really glad that... Who was that? I think it was Bobby sent this one in. Oh no, it might have been P44. Let me see. Yeah, 44 sent this one in. Speaking of social engineering, though, you might like this. Oh, wait, let me double check that. Thank you for reminding me, Potion. I believe I have... Yes, I have the Blue Hammer article up right here. In fact, I've got 2 of them in here. In fact, we'll start off with the weak sauce one from Bleeping Computers, and then we'll go into like a little bit more in-depth one from Sidres. Maybe it'll explain it a little bit better in here. But yeah, I do have that on the list. But 44 actually sent this one in. Something about using toast notifications. Yeah, I've seen the one that's... what is it? I have seen the ones that are public notification, the public disclosure, and I guess he was trying to work through Microsoft's bug bounty, from what I've heard through the grapevine, and they severely jerked him around and pissed him off, so he just dropped it, just boop. And all Microsoft had to say was, "Hey, we support responsible disclosure." I was like, "Yeah, but not responsible paying of bounties." For something like that. But we'll get to it later in the stream. But for everybody who didn't hear, the Blue Hammer exploit is a privilege escalation that exists inside of Microsoft Defender, I believe. I believe it was Defender. And it allows you to jump directly from like a regular user account, not even an admin, all the way up to like NT sysadmin. Or not sysadmin, NT authority in there. So... yeah, so we're gonna cover that potion. It looks really funny. All right, well, let's dive in here. So the first one we've got is from BRMK. Is Toast My Way, abusing Windows Toast notifications for fun and user manipulation. Always a fun time. So I wasn't using this. I wasn't looking for this. I was casually going through COM interfaces available on a Windows 11 box, doing what I often do when I have a bit of free time and a vague sense of something interesting is hiding there. And then I stumbled onto something I hadn't really thought about before. The exact mechanism Windows uses to generate toast notifications. You know, those little pop-ups that appear in the corner of your screen telling you Edge has an update, or Teams has a new message, or your security center data detected something. Yeah, those things. Turns out, under the hood, they're just calling the WinRT API calls. And if you can make WinRT API calls, you can send whatever you want. So that's a pretty interesting detail, and if you already have an implant running in user context. So basically, everything starts with the AMUD in here, or AMID, Application User Model ID. That's an identifier Windows uses to associate a notification with a specific application. So that includes the icon, name, and the place in the notification center. So in order to send a toast, you need to have one of them. The good news is, you don't need to register a new app. There's already plenty of AMUDs registered on any standard Windows machines. So you have Microsoft Edge, Microsoft Teams, Windows Security, bunch of others, all sitting there ready to be borrowed. And the interesting part is, honestly, I wasn't aware of, you don't need to launch the notification from the actual process that owns that AMID. So whatever you are, you can spawn a toast notification for any of those AMIDs. Oh, that's classic Microsoft. Classic Microsoft. So the AMIDs are not generated on the fly. They already exist because the applications register them and integrate them into the Windows shell. And if you want the full picture, he links to some Microsoft docs. And what matters is that they're already sitting there ready to be borrowed. That said, getting the list of them is pretty straightforward. He's got a nice little PowerShell snippet here. Let's see. So he does get the start apps, and then select the app ID. And then go through and basically find actually he appends a couple of environment variables to the paths in here. And then basically goes through for every path in the path, looking recursively for .link files to it, and then finding the folder and the item. Okay. Pretty straightforward. Classic Microsoft. I know, right? Hey, Kaiju. Let's take it, man. So the script covers the UWP apps and link shortcuts in the start menu, handles the majority of cases, and a third source worth checking is the registry directly. So he's got that all written out in some PowerShelly here. PowerShelly. So with that list in hand, sending a notification is almost embarrassingly simple. Oh wow, that is pretty damn simple. again, some more PowerShell here. So you add a type named an assembly name. That'll give you the Windows runtime. Define a couple of imports up here. I forget what the exact term is for this in PowerShell, but basically bringing those into the window. You set your AMID, and then you have an XML format for it. Because of course it's XML, because it's Microsoft. So if you're using this for MS Edge, this would say toast generic import and update. Something requires your attention. And then afterwards, you build a doc from the XML, you load it into this variable, and then you send a new toast notification. So let me see. So yeah, up here's where he actually brought it in. And then he just sends the notifier. So he brings those in, sends the notifier, boom. So that's really straightforward. Once you know all the moving pieces, it's straightforward in retrospect. Micro slop, but major flop. Oh, somebody was talking about needed a name for people who are like just dead set on using the Microsoft ecosystem. I was like, micro sloppers. Practically writes itself. I use Windows begrudgingly, not because I like it or because I want to. All right, so what can you actually do with this? The interesting part to the author is if you have an implant, like a C2 implant, Mythic, Cobalt Strike, Brute Retell, whatever. If you have an implant running in the user context, you're not always in a position to escalate immediately, or maybe escalation isn't even the objective. But you're sitting right there in the middle of an active user session, quietly thinking about how to wrap this job up before AI replaces you. Too soon, bro. Too soon. And sometimes a simple question comes to mind. How do you get the person to do something useful for you? And the answer historically has involved all sorts of creativity, but toast notifications are surprisingly elegant for this channel because they look completely legitimate. They appear from the apps the user already trusts, and they can carry interactive elements like buttons, text inputs, and protocol links. So what can you pull off? You could send them to a page. So maybe you want credentials and you want to let them know that the red team is watching you. Hi, sock guys. Nice. Maybe you just need them to hit a URL that you control. So a well-crafted notification from Microsoft Edge or Defender with a single open button and a convincing line of text is enough for them, for basically a lot of users, right? Authentication required. I mean, this would look pretty legit, especially if you're watching the session while they're doing things in there. Oh, that's hilarious. So all you have to do to go add an action is you tell it what the action content is, the activation type, and then the arguments. Boom. Nice. Nice. Yeah, that's a bad.
Hello, IT.
Let's kill that.
Have you tried turning it off and on again?
Sorry, I was checking something over on the kick side. Let's see. Hey, Deefus, what's up, man? Since the Bad Sector live seems to be taking a longer break, can you recommend something similar? He actually had some lists in there. And I believe... Hang on. Let me finish getting through this toast one in here, Deefus, and we'll go through it. But I believe in here he had a list of all of the sources that he was tracking, but he did have recommendations in there. Yeah. Oh, Potion, this would be so easy to send them to like a fishlet, get credentials, bam. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Let's see. Curious if you'd share an opinion on which LLM I should use for coding from a security and cost perspective. So I'm wanting to start to use one with recommendations, if that's okay. If you wanted to, you could even you could use something like I have not used OpenCode, but I do have a buddy who's using OpenCode with Gemma 4 that just released. I think he's using the 22B model. So you'd have to have something like one of the beefier RTX 30, 40, 90s in that series. Something that had like the 24 gigs of RAM and probably nothing else running in there. There might be some quantized Gemma models. I haven't looked. I only have 12 gigs on my graphics card, so I'm not running a whole lot locally here. I need to take some time to go see if I can put together a local GPU rig, because I have some parts and it would be probably dirt slow, but it'd be fun to tinker around with, where I could run something beefier. Because essentially I could throw 6 old 1080 Ti cards that I've got. So those each have 11 gigs in it. So I'd have 66 gigs of VRAM spread across them. It would be dirt slow because of the way the box is set up. It only has like PCI 1 lanes in it, or 1 PCI lane in there, to load up and get the model in there, but then actual inference shouldn't be that bad. I've just been meaning to go put it together. I haven't taken the time to go put the box in. But yeah, he's really liking the Gemma, whatever, version 4. He's liking those. Did you hear about the analysis from Goldman Sachs reporting that AI contributed to basically zero contribution to the US GDP? Oh, I know, right? That's the hard thing is, right now it kind of feels like a lot of the AI stuff is, it's still stuck in like potential, right? So like, for example, you have something, you pick it up, it now has potential energy, and then you actually convert it into actual kinetic energy, right? It feels like AI is kind of stuck there, right? It's stuck just kind of in potential. You don't see very many people shipping things with AI products. I don't think it's going to stay that way for very long. I think it's going to probably speed up. And we're going to talk about a couple of those things coming up later in the stream. So, let's see here. All right, back to the article here. So, simulating a Teams message. So this is where the format really starts pulling its weight. So Teams notifications aren't just a little title and text. They support sender names, circular avatar overrides, hero images. That's funny they call it that, and inline reply inputs. So the whole thing. So you can build something like that at a glance is indistinguishable from the real incoming message from a person inside the organization. So a name the target recognizes, a face, a short message with just the context. It feels legitimate. The user sees it. They tap whatever you tell them. Now, I will say this, though. I have maybe used this little reply box. Thankfully, I don't use Teams now. But back when I did for a long time, I maybe used this like 3 times in the entire, I don't know, 6 years I was banished into Microsoft Teams land. So maybe that's just me, though. I don't see a lot of people necessarily using this. I like this idea better, where it's like, hey, redirect them to a fishlet. Or even better yet, if you've got protocol redirects, redirect them to a listener that you've got running on the system that you could then forward their credentials over to, right? Real easy setup that way. There's probably easier ways to do that, but I mean, still, there's things you could do with it. Oh, he even has the sample XML for that. Nice. Join call, dismiss. Awesome. Love that. So here's a hypothesis I find genuinely interesting. Call it lateral movement through social engineering. You identify someone with a bit of weight, so a lead, a manager, someone people listen to. You send a notification that looks like a message from a trusted colleague, get them into a call with your social engineering expert. The target's already primed. They click because they trust the sender. They join because it felt urgent but routine. And from there, the expert works the angle with something needs to be resolved right away. And the whole team should be looped in. So let's get everyone together fast. One person trusts you, convinces a group, trust boundaries collapse. Suddenly, you've gone from a single compromise session to the whole team on a call you control. I'd say that might be kind of a far-fetched scenario, because if you're in a position of trust in that way, the chances are that somebody knows that person is going to recognize it. It's going to kind of go up dramatically. So I like the idea of it. I can see where he's going as a worst case scenario. I think that's a pretty low probability scenario. Why is it the more you learn, the dumber you feel? That's actually really simple. Hang on. Do I still have my paint up? Hang on. I do. There's a very simple reason for that. I like to think of it as like the horizon theory, right? So let's say all you know is here, right? You know, like one little dot of information. And from that, you can kind of extrapolate out a little bit, right? But it's all theoretical. So you have this kind of like visual horizon right here. So if you don't know very much, your horizon is kind of small. Now, let's say you know a ton, right? Let's say the amount that you know covers this whole circle. Well, now all of a sudden your horizon gets a little bit bigger. Right? And then let's say you actually go through and explore this, and then you fill in this circle. And then now the horizon stretches even further. So now you're realizing, holy crap, I know so much, but there is so much I don't know out here. And then it just continues and it continues. It just goes do. So as you learn more, you can see farther and realize how much you don't know. It's kind of funny that way, that the more you learn, the more stupid you feel. I just described all of cybersecurity. I know, Matt, Bobby, right? You do not need to go outside. Why? You haven't needed to go outside all afternoon, and now you need to go out. Don't give me those sweet doggy eyes. Damn it. The Mac is back, right? Just lobbing fireballs. I know, right? Hang on one sec, guys. Let me go throw peaches in the backyard. I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. I'm back. Guess who's back? Back again. Blaise is back. Tell a friend. I wasn't pooping. I was literally letting peaches out. Did you delete your own message while I was gone? Or did the auto mod get you? Oh, no, you did delete your own message. That's funny. Oh, now this one's a hilarious idea. All right, so this is a fun one because it is genuinely effective. Going back to the article here, talking about these basically Windows notifications. They're called toast notifications. This is funny because it's genuinely effective. This is genuinely effective because for certain categories of targets. Using the Windows Security AMID, you can push something that looks like a high severity incident notification, complete with the progress bar showing telemetry processing, severity selector, and a join meeting button pointing to whatever you want. So for users who take security alerts seriously, this hits differently. If the goal is to get someone to install a tool, join a call, or pull in colleagues, the urgency framing does a lot of the heavy lifting. Ooh. I can see where you could have some fun with that. So, but the truth is, none of these are magical. The technique lives and dies on the pretext like everything else in social engineering. That's the hardest part, obviously, honestly. Sometimes it is technical, especially like when you're doing email phishing, because there's a lot of email defense because it's been such a successful medium, because email is one of the oldest ways of doing this. But honestly, any social engineering honestly lives on the pretext. That's the hardest thing to develop. The second hardest thing is how you're actually going to get it to them. Yeah, Bobby, I had no idea that you could do all this with Toast, but he gives great examples in here. Let me see. Hold on. Here's the sample XML. So it's a very short snippet. Here, by the way, I've been forgetting to do this. Let me throw this up in the chat for everybody. Boop. There you go. This is the article we're reading currently. But yeah, he gives great XML examples. He's got a PowerShell snippet up here that's basically, hey, here's how you send this. Boom. Really, really simple. So yeah, it's just like an XML form, basically. Let's see. So he goes back talking about basically the technique lives and dies on the pretext, like everything else in social engineering, but the delivery channel is usually clean. So it's native, trusted, and the pop-up dismisses itself. The notification stays in the action center until the user clears it, but no persistent artifact is left behind in a way that would obviously flag your presence. Oh yeah, I bet those aren't logged at all. That's awesome. So some obvious limitations. First, you need to have an interactive session. If your implant is running in session 0, the API call will succeed, but obviously the notification just never shows up. So you need to be in a session where the actual user is logged in and looking at the screen. The second one is some organizations can push a policy like no toast application notifications that will disable toast notifications entirely. So if that's set, you will have success, but notification doesn't appear, so it's worth checking before spending time on your pretext. So on the detection side, it's not very straightforward. You can do an ETW provider that exists from Microsoft, but there's no single event that ties your process to the notification. So in fact, the notification dispatch goes through the WPN service, and ETW events are attributed there, not to the caller. So an EDR hooking WinRTCom interfaces would catch it, so you have to keep that in mind. And of course, he released a nice little toolkit called Toast Notify BOF. Nice. Always happy to see another BOF file. Yeah, just have ChatGPT run it. You know that you laugh about that, but actually I'm working on something right now. I got an amazing hookup on Codex, and I don't know, I must have burned like 1 billion tokens in Codex, testing it out and seeing like how it compares to Claude Code. So far, actually, it's doing a really decent job. It's doing far better than I expected. Let's see. Burnt Toast, PowerShell module for displaying toast notifications on Windows 10 and Server 2019. Cool. I wonder if this still works on like 11 and up in here. Even though this is targeting Windows 10. It can take ages to download. Well, yeah, at 478 commits, that's probably huge. I'd say probably don't clone it. Probably just do the zip download. That would probably get you a lot faster. That's pretty cool, though. All right, so his tool here, which is Toast Notify BOF, exposes 3 subcommands: get the AMID, send a toast, and also custom. Send toast lets you send a simple title body notification for any AMID. The custom subcommand is where the flexibility lives, and where you spend most of your time smashing your head on pretext. So instead of building the XML internally, it takes a base64 encoded payload directly, so you can craft complex toast templates like progress bars and input selections and deliver them without recompiling anything. Okay, that's pretty cool. Let's see. Closing thoughts. There's something almost poetic about this. Windows built an entire notification system designed to pull user attention toward legit apps, and at the same time is perfectly happy to be pointed at whatever you want, no questions asked, using identities it already has registered. Realistically, there's only a few things that you can do with this kind of toast notification abuse, and they're pretty specific. But it was fun to think about. At the end of the day, if the user clicks, it's a good day. If they don't, well, it's just a notification. Nice. And then he has a little update here to talk about, apparently some other folks have looked into this. Fox IT released Invoke Credential Fisher a while back, which is a PowerShell script that used a toast notification to social engineer users into providing credentials. It was effective at the time, but the OS changed in newer versions of Windows broke it. Okay. Let's see. iPurple team also extended the research with the C# port of the BOF called Toast Notify, and a solid detection engineering section covering DLL load monitoring, Sigma rules, Sigma, and MDE queries. Okay, that's pretty cool, because I was like, this jumps through so many parts of the operating system. I didn't know how you would trace this if anybody's looking for it. Census Arc also published an analysis of the previously undocumented Russian toolkit called Control, CTRL, which included toast notification spoofing modules. Ooh. And that toolkit was active since mid-February 2026. Independent convergence on documented APIs, but good that the technique was validated operationally, right? That's awesome. And there was another one here, actually talking about from iPurple team. That was funny because that's the other one that I had pulled up. me see what they've got here. Go make ransomware. No, don't. I'm not making ransomware. Let's see. I want to see what the iPurple team guys have to say about this. Use PowerShell commandlet. Yep. Query the Hive registries. This looks almost verbatim like for the one that the other guy posted about the same time. So they're probably borrowing research. Not directly stealing it. They're probably literally just like, hey, we were getting ready to do this. I want to see if they've got anything else in here. I don't know. These look like almost identical. I mean, at least iPurple team actually did come in and talk about how to do the detection engineering for it. So for my blue folks, I'll drop this link in here. They're probably selling, what are those things? They're probably selling swaps over on like CSGO with a username like that. All right. Now, one I've been waiting for because the ads are about to run. Hang on. I'm going to run the ads and then we'll go through this one real quick because I love these guys. Watchtower has the best blog in here. So hold on. I'm going to run them so everybody who's listening can actually see it. What are the thoughts on the router bans in the US? It seems kind of silly because I don't know, because there's so many holes in it from what I was reading, that it doesn't cover a lot of the major industrial manufacturers, which would be like the primary targets, but also, I don't know, I'm of two minds about it. One is those things are incredibly insecure and it'd be super easy to go build in a backdoor. And then if you think about it, you sell 1 million of those routers, you've got 1 million unit strong botnet. So, I mean, and then, but the flip side of that is there's nobody manufacturing those inside the US. We have done such an amazing job of forgetting how to build anything and sent it out to everyone else that we have piss poor manufacturing facilities in the US. Not really piss poor. I think what we got is good, but we don't nearly have the volume that we need. Yeah, it makes me think of the old Linksys routers where you could run like Open Tomato and all the other open source router firmwares. I loved those. Those were amazing. Fortunately, I think I finished my drink already. Oh yeah. Not sponsored by Jocko yet. We're back on the orange Joccos. I finally finished off the green ones. Yeah. That's right. DDWRT. I loved those. You could do such fun stuff with those little routers back in the day. I loved having those to mess around with. The 3-letter agencies probably have backdoors built in anyway. Yeah, I know. I know. But the problem is we don't want other countries' 3-letter agencies to have that access. Okay, cool. Ads are done. If you don't know the guys who are at Watchtower, they write the absolute best cybersecurity blogs on the entire internet. I love them so much. Their meme game is top tier. It's so amazing, it has to be fattening. And their research is really solid whenever they come up with something. So this one that I was waiting for, unfortunately didn't come out till after the last news stream. Like I think it came out Thursday. I was like, you guys let me down. I really wanted to cover that last Wednesday. Anyway, it says you're not supposed to share files with everyone. So this is progress share file pre-auth RCE chain. And there's 2 separate CVEs associated to it. 2026, 269, nice, 9, and 2701. Let's see. Hang on one second. Let me check something real quick. Let me restart YouTube real quick because for some reason it is... Okay, there we go. Apologies for my YouTube folks. If it was messing up, it should be hopefully a clear signal now. Okay. YouTube was throwing up a warning saying the bitrate was fluctuating too much. Okay. Here we go. All right. So let's go back to this one. Again, this is share file. Or no, yeah, pre-auth RCE chain in, what did they say it was? Progress share file. All right. Get ready for this, because these guys, I love their writing style. If you squint and look at the CISA Kev list, you might think it's made up exclusively of vulnerabilities in file transfer solutions. While this would be wrong, and you shouldn't squint, it's bad for your eyes, file transfer solutions do play a decent role in the CISA known exploited vendors. I think that's what that is. In the CISA Kev list, due to how fondly threat actors, APT groups, and ransomware gangs alike perceive them. So the following present industry-defined historical incidents, like the MoveIt breach, Clio Harmony, VL Trader, and Lexicom, and Fortress Go Anywhere with mysterious exploitation activity. And today we find ourselves analyzing the journey we took to discover multiple vulnerabilities in Progress Sharefile, ultimately chained together to achieve pre-authenticated remote code execution and share it with more memes. I love it. Their memes and snark are just top tier fire. Let's see. So what is Progress Sharefile? Software suite that was previously owned by Citrix, there's the first problem, but later acquired by Progress in 2024. Sharefile software gives you a structured, secured space to work with clients, share files, collect signatures, request data, and manage to-dos in one place, improving collaboration and the experience around it. So at a first glance, the software's description and sign-up process, one might assume that the Sharefile is a SaaS-based company, which is typically out of our scope. And you'd be partially right. However, Sharefile maintains an on-premises extended solution called its Storage Zone Controller. And the Storage Zone Controller in Sharefile is a customer-managed gateway that keeps your files in your own storage, on-prem or cloud, while still using Sharefile's SaaS interface. It handles secure file transfers, authentication, and policy enforcement, letting you control where data is stored, while Sharefile manages access and sharing. So it's like SaaS if you can authenticate and manage your files. Actually, the data isn't stored within Sharefile infrastructure. It can be configured to be hosted on the local file system, an SMB server, cloud buckets, whatever. So this is likely important for customers who, for whatever reason, cannot use Sharefile's infrastructure, such as for data sovereignty, regulatory requirements, or just maybe security hygiene. So to get an idea of how prevalent the Storage Zone Controller is, a quick internet search revealed about 30,000 instances. Ooh. That's a lot of instances. So what are we rambling about today? So in this blog post, we'll walk through vulnerabilities we discovered in the Progress Sharefile that allow us to achieve a pre-authenticated RCE on what was, at the time of the research, a fully patched version. And so the two we're looking at here is, so it's two different ones that they chain together, it looks like. An authentication bypass, which is the 269, nice, 9 CVE, and the 2701 CVE. Hey, Midsite, what's going on? We are talking exploit discovery from the guys at Watchtower. It's good. I love their blog. So Sharefile has two common branches for applications hosted, and they're using an IIS setup. They've got branch 6X, which is built on .NET Core, and the 5X branch, which is built on ASP.NET. Gross. Although our research did at a different point focus on both branches, both vulnerabilities discussed today are specific to the 5X branch. Specifically, we identified the new vulnerabilities within Storage Controller 5.12.3, which was the latest version when they were doing this research. And there was these vulnerabilities were resolved in 5.12.4, and they were released March 10th. Okay, so it makes sense why they released it in April, because they were waiting for that patch to basically have some time to roll out, get basted out there. So if they rolled out the patch March 10th, they released it April 2nd. They gave pretty much 3 weeks for people to really go update their systems. Well, welcome in, Midsite. Dude, this is our weekly hacker news, what do I call it? Basically, hacker news stream. I don't know why I'm trying to get fancy with my words here, but that's what we're doing. All right, so what did they do in the zone controller? So to remind everybody, this system is like a software as a service, right? It's a cloud system that you go connect into, and then they have the zone controllers, storage zone controllers that run on-prem. So the diagram would kind of look like this, right? Let's come over here. Let's say what they're going to have is you're going to have their SaaS solution running up here. You're going to have some good old-fashioned internet cloud action happening here. This guy's connected up here. And then let's say you've got your own company network kind of defined over here. Tiny lightning bolt. And so inside here, what you'd have is you would have that storage, what do they call it? Zone controller. So you'd have that storage zone controller. You'd have all your various servers basically living in here. And let's say, for example, you had like an SMB server in here where you had all your various files and everything. So this way, your zone controller could talk to this, and then this would actually come in and kind of like link up to the SaaS, so that way, Bob over here in accounting, whatever he needs to connect to it, just goes straight up to the SaaS, and then he can access those files basically through here, writing this kind of like link back down to what's being shared on the SMB server. So this is what they're talking about. This is the section right here that they found the exploit in, was in that zone controller here. Yeah. Cybersecurity, CIA, tough, OPSEC, RDP, tough hacker stream. That's right. Which is funny because I actually call the bot over on Discord the hacker bot. Hacker bot. All right. So let's talk about that zone controller. So we set out with the goal of trying to achieve a complete compromise of a share file zone storage zone controller from a pre-authenticated perspective. That's right. Today we're talking about remote code execution. Oh yeah. But we already got the TLDR that they found an auth bypass too. Installation is pretty straightforward. All the files live in the IIS directory, and the application is registered under IIS as the default website. So it's before continuing, it's vital to get set up. So we extracted and decompiled all the application's DLL files into their respective C# code. And post-installation, a configuration page is launched from localhost to authenticate to the ShareFile instance and its connected SaaS user. And to clarify, ShareFile has a cloud offering, which is their SaaS, which is Progress's, that's the company's name. And this is Progress's main interface and infrastructure for managing their files. Accounts can be created through their website without a sales approval process. So they got it all configured. They have this zone controller connected up to the actual Progress SaaS up here. We're getting sassy. So we configured the setup the zone storage controller to work as if it were running within a production environment. So that included authenticating and connecting the zone controller to the Progress SaaS, and creating a primary zone which hosts the files on the local file server, which is not in the cloud environment. Like I said, that would be something like this SMB server, rat meow. So with all web applications, it's imperative to understand where we are as attackers can interact with the application's code from an external pre-authenticated perspective. .NET applications such as this have a variety of ways in which interactions can be achieved for file sharing, such as ASHX, ASMX, and ASPX. ASPX being the most popular one. That's the one I usually see probably 95% of the time. I don't remember the last time I actually saw an ASHX or an ASMX in here. Two booty. What's up, man? Two booty fingers. Thank you for coming online. Welcome in. I hope everybody's having a wonderful Wednesday. I'm having a wonderful Wednesday now reading this blog post because these guys are hilarious. I love their blog. Security with a little bit of humor helps keep the tears away when you think about security. Anyway, so with these primary file extensions, and this includes scripted code, it's also possible for additional code to be introduced and referenced to these through compiled DLLs. And routes such as REST endpoints are defined in the web config, and they're also backed by the DLL's code itself too. That's why they decompiled all the DLLs. Pen test my guy. Dude, that's what I do. That's what I've been doing. Dude, I've been doing that for 8 years now. Hey, guy, what's up, man? CI/CD pipelines. They're my favorite, dude. That's where all the secrets are. And they're so easy to steal. If you don't believe me, just go ask Trivy. Name scares me. I mean, there's nothing scary about that. Now, if his name was 3 Booty Fingers, then that might be scary. Just saying. If you ever saw, God, what was that movie? Beer Fest. You ever saw Beer Fest? God, tell me that was the name of the movie. Was it? Yeah, Beer Fest. If you ever saw Beer Fest and he does the example about why he doesn't play Pong anymore, yeah, that's when 3 would become scary. Fist of the booty. No. That's just going too far. All right. Anyway, back to the article here. So we're talking about basically the various executable extensions which render as web pages, and then all the usual like REST endpoints. They're all calling DLLs somewhere in the background. So when you're looking at a large .NET application such as this, we typically go through the motions of our methodology by first looking at the easier to read scripts, which those extension files, before we're looking at the larger DLLs, which contain things such as the REST APIs. And before diving into the code itself, it's important to see how the application responds when each script or file endpoint is requested. Usually the questions in mind such as, what status code is returned? What's the content length? What's the content type? Keeping in mind, the application is a living, agile thing, and poking it can reveal traits not obvious in the code. There's no authentication bypass here? That's a rhetorical question, right? So to start, we listed out all the ASPX files within the application and set requests to the server to observe those responses. So then they come out here, they list all of the various ASPX ones they've got, and we're looking for different differentials that might encourage a closer look. Typically endpoints that don't redirect to authentication or return something like a 401 or a 403. Basically saying, hey, if it's not redirecting to authentication, then it's not checking your authentication. Or necessarily, basically looking for the ones that recognize that, hey, you're supposed to be authenticated here. So we quickly observed that the configuration endpoint that we set up the application with earlier, which is config serve login, returns a 403 status code. It's only accessible if you try to access it from the host itself. So it's got an allow list in there that says basically you can only connect from localhost. So while pursuing through this status code and responding to each endpoint, we came across what can only be described as an anomaly, which is the config service admin endpoint, and says, see if you can spot it. Okay. Well, this is interesting because we get a 302, and we get a 302 over to the login with the caller page admin. It takes a get, post, patch, delete options and head. Nice. Oh, interesting. So it tells us what the caller page is. I don't know what they're calling out here necessarily, except maybe the caller page redirect. Let me see. Access control, allow origin, star. Maybe that's part of the issue. Let's see what they said. So when assessing this endpoint through the browser, we're redirected to the location header authenticating to the login ASPX, which the 403s, as mentioned before, it's only available for localhost access. Hold on, let me make sure that... Oh, interesting. Okay, I see where they're going now. The config service login here, which I don't think is the typical login page, but this one, it redirects us over here. So we get a 302 when we try to go to the config service admin, but that 302 redirects us to config service login when we do that. So while anomalous here is the rather large context length and the content displayed in the body, this is quite peculiar as it's not something we've seen before, at least not in a .NET application. And for those unfamiliar, a behavior that was neither common nor unheard of was present in PHP applications. In certain circumstances, developers might have implemented functionality that checks for authentication and redirects the user, but forgets to die, resulting in the rest of the script and its accessible functionality executing. Actually, I don't know if I've ever come across this. This is known as an execution after redirect, an EAR. Nice. 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 Let's see. So friends of the internet, we have what we need to begin, an authentication bypass. There's no auth bypass here. Status code 302. Content length 1 billion. What was the content length here? Let's see. Content type. Yeah, that's a really long content length for something that shouldn't be loading up anything, especially if you're 302ing. 302 shouldn't really load anything. It should be basically content length 0, if I remember correctly. Or I don't remember if the headers are counted in that. Maybe just to cover the headers. Okay, so let's walk through this one. So if you're inclined to test this through your browser, you can modify the HTTP response to with whatever tool you're using, drop the location header, and see the admin panel renders. This is an enterprise grade do baby shark. Baby redirect do baby redirect do. Hey band, what's up, man? All your offs just bypass me. Nice. Yeah. Baby 302 do baby 302 do. Damn it, that song's gonna be stuck in my head all night. Thanks, band. Well, actually, thank you, Watchtower. Thank you. Oh, that's hilarious. So all they had to do was change the response code, probably to like a 200, and delete the location header in their intercepting proxy, and then boop, everything just rendered. Nice. So the above shows that what is visible after removing the redirection location header, allowing the rest of the body to render in the browser. Functionality is present to us that can be interacted with without authentication, but we'll get to that. First, let's work out at a code level what's going wrong here. So going through the source code of that admin ASPX, there's a reference to a class called the config service admin. And the code for this class was in the DLL files they compiled when they first started investigating this. Let's see. So they're doing a if not is session authenticated. And then what was the other thing they've got marked here? Then they do the redirect. That's the problem right here. So the problem is they check to make sure that if it wasn't authenticated, right? So is session authenticated? This should hopefully return a true. That's bad. So if we look at this config service admin function, page load above the page load function in here. Boop, this one. The authentication check happens at point 0 and the redirect isn't introduced until point 1 by the redirect and complete request. So looking deeper into the redirect helper function, the redirect and complete request pasted above this guy right here, we can see that the response is redirected using the native response redirect at point dos. This one right here. So this all looks above board, but we've spent their time driving through the C# code. We'll notice an oddity. 2 arguments are passed to the redirect function, a string and a boolean. Oh, interesting. I'm not familiar with what the function prototypes are, so I don't know what this would actually be. If you see your auths in my room, can't take back the pain that I caused you. It's the point where I love and hate. If admin equals true, then redirect to admin local storage. Admin equals true. I'm going to try and sing all the chats now. Thank you, guys. Honestly, Watchtower needs to be careful with this kind of stuff. Because, for real, IT people are very lyrical people. Okay, so going back to the article right here, they're talking about, in most common uses of this function, you'll find it as a string value, which is where you redirect the redirect URI should come from. So in this case, redirect to login with the caller page being admin. However, in this implementation, the Boolean is additionally supplied right here. So looking at the documentation, shed some light on this. So what's the Boolean do? Redirect a client to a new URL, specifies the new URL and whether execution of the current page should be terminated. So for some reason, they had to go way out of their way to add this. This is an optional parameter, right? If they had just left this off, this wouldn't have been an issue. Literally, just left that off. Been good. That's funny. Because this should redirect to true in here. if I'm understanding this correctly. Hold on, let me just look at the documentation real quick. So we could have redirect, which takes just a string, which is the URL, and a string boolean. Well, I think this would be kind of the same one in here, where this would default to true. I'm not sure. I don't see it in here. Dude, Potion, I still struggle with spelling sometimes. And I keep telling my older son, Agent Zero, it's like, dude, there's some stuff you just have to memorize, and spelling is one of them. I'm sorry. There are some words in English that just don't make any sense the way you sound them out. Anyway, so going back to this, so they added a second Boolean function, or a second Boolean argument to the redirect function that told it to not stop loading the rest of the page. So the Boolean's value determines if the execution of the current page should be terminated. In this particular instance, it's applied a false flag. So the response is a status 302 redirecting to the login page. And the remaining function with the class is executed is not terminated. This is not a good thing. Oh, that's bad. All the words, there's many words, all great words. Sounds like a Dr. Doofenshmirtz moment. Why did I put that there? Unfortunately, Dr. Doofenshmirtz was a bit after my time. I know what you're talking about, but it's not like lore I'm intimately familiar with. It's spelled Q-U. All right, so how did they take this to an RCE? So armed with our newly minted authentication bypass vulnerability, we charged on immediately through, and we're presented with two options on this admin ASPX. Create a new zone or join an existing zone. Oh my. So a zone configuration determines how the instance's files and data are stored. I'm going to take a wild guess here. I bet what they did is they created a new zone and they added something on that local server that let them go through and overwrite it. Basically add a vulnerable configuration or maybe add a web shell, something so they could write maybe like an ASPX web shell onto the system. I'm going to place my bets. Hold on. I know there's a way to do this. Hold on. How do you do a poll? I don't remember. Here we go. Question. How'd they do it? We're going to take bets on it. Create zone, join zone. I want to do this. There we go. All right, so there's a poll up. We'll see how I want to see how they did this as we come through and read through this. Oh, so it was in your daughter's time, so that's why you're a fan of it. I get that because I'm learning so much about Sonic the Hedgehog right now because both of my boys are just infatuated with Sonic the Hedgehog. So much so, I started playing Sonic Frontiers on the Nintendo Switch because they were so bad at it. Granted, I don't expect them to have as much experience as I do with video games, right? At the same time, they're missing so much. So then I start playing and just BTFOing the game on the hardest setting. And they're like, what? I didn't know you could do that. I didn't know you could do that. I was like, yeah, it's because I actually read what's on the screen, dude. And both of them can read. Even my 4-year-old can read. Yeah. You know, you joke about that, Potion, but you know what my older son asked me? He's like, Daddy, how come you wasted so much of your youth becoming a pro gamer? Oh, they crack me up so much. And I joke with them. I was like, and it's like, how'd you do that, Daddy? He's like, because I'm a pro gamer, son. So there's a thing in the game where you can like create this blue trail behind you. It's called a psi loop. And if you close it around an enemy, it damages them. And it has all sorts of various effects. But also, if you close the loop, then you can get rings, right? So what did I do? I start just like spinning in a circle and closing the loop real fast and getting a shit ton of rings and then charging up Sonic when I'm doing it. And they're like, what? I never thought about doing that. I was like, dude, I've been cheesing game mechanics since before you were an itch in my pants. Yeah, looks like 50-50. Okay, cool. We're going to see who's right. All right. So going back to this, they have two options here with access to admin. A zone configuration determines how the instances, files, and data are stored. So this key is distinguishing feature in how it uses the on-premise zone controller rather than relying solely on the SaaS or cloud offering. It gives enterprises the ability to store their files on their infrastructure and via the storage repository. So this can be in various shapes or forms. You could be SharePoint, AWS3, SMB, local file system. Yeah. It's tilting towards what I said. Oh, see, the memes are awesome. Zone controller. It's secure on my info, right? Right? I love this meme. This is one of my favorite meme formats. So from an external perspective, going through the flow of trying to create a new zone represented errors that we were not able to overcome. So we quickly moved from the function to looking at what was possible to join existing zone. Damn it! Oh, missed it by that much. All right, so I'm guessing that we haven't got confirmation yet, but the odds just swung wildly towards join existing zone. Okay, so this will be present in most, if not all, of the exposed zone storage controllers on the internet. So why would you have a zone controller if it wasn't configured? So what options do they have here? Local network, Azure, and S3. Okay. So to test whether the functionality is both accessible and actionable from our pre-authenticated perspective, we configured the zone to connect to a local network share with the hope of making a slight modification as a litmus test. So they set up so there's the primary zone controller. They give it the host name, which is ShareFile Lab, and the external address in here. And the network location is Windows 10. Okay. So there's various fields that can be modified. We'll try to simplify it for our purposes. You have to give it a zone name, what the primary zone URL is, host name, external address, the storage repository, and then a passphrase. And the passphrase is what's used to encrypt API and REST endpoints for the current zone controller. So initially, when creating a zone, there was a need to utilize a passphrase, and this value is used to encrypt all the API interactions with the particular primary zone controller. So it's key to note, from a pre-authenticated perspective, an attacker wouldn't know this value. True. However, when making modifications to fields such as the storage repository or the external address, the value of the passphrase is auto-populated by the server. No, bet. Basically rendering this deed null and void. All right, so you're in the danger zone. So we set out to explore and analyze each field within the zone configuration and assess its security impact upon modification by a potential threat actor. For example, with this knowledge in hand, we could change the victim's storage repository to point to an AWS S3 bucket that we control. This is where I thought they might be going with this. Meaning that when files are synced or uploaded to the instance, they're sent to a repository we can control, effectively exfiltrating data. Okay, so there's a note here though. Before we proceed, it's best to outline our thought process before we arrived here. In common system architectures, where there's a primary server which controls various subordinate hosts, the primary server typically maintains the source of truth, and the commands and configurations can be downstreamed to the subordinate hosts, right? So kind of like master and secondary situation in here, or primary, secondary, whatever. So things are starting to get spicy, but not quite RCE levels yet. With that in mind, we considered whether it might be possible to coerce a victim storage zone controller to join a malicious zone under our control and expand our offensive capabilities, potentially enabling access to additional storage zone controller functionality through downstreaming. And we can attempt this by altering the primary zone controller field to our URL. So they had, right there, our primary zone controller. Oh, there it is. Hold on, where do they talk about this? There we go. So we, however, realized that the zone controllers communicate with each other via an encrypted signed API. As such, our passphrase in a real-world attack would need to differ from the victims when modifying their configuration. So this is based on the passphrase that gets configured. What initially presented a roadblock was that in order to change the passphrase, there's a front-end request to supply the old passphrase, which the attackers wouldn't have. Fortunately for us, old passphrase is not validated when changing the primary zone controller. So we can connect to the victim's storage zone controller to our malicious one without authentication. RIP. Malicious zone, storage zone. Nice. I'm not pooping, band. I'm sitting right here. So at this point, we have to highlight a caveat we observed with this functionality. It can only be executed if the server side is authenticated with the SAS, the share file SAS, which is pretty common, as this is a requirement for the storage zone controller to work, or basically to work as intended. Okay, so now we have our post-auth RCE. Since we've now shown we can bypass authentication and modify the current share file passphrase, we have one final step. Pop that shit. Oh, that's too funny. These are just assumed poops. Don't give up on the English. No. All right, let's see here. All right, so for popping the shell, when you think about it, it should be a fairly easy task. You just become an admin on a file storage solution. We could logically abuse the product's built-in upload functionality products like this typically allow you to specify the file storage location, and we could just reconfigure share file to store uploaded files to a potentially dangerous location, such as the application's web root. Okay, that's where I thought they were going with this. But it looks like they're doing it a different way. They're doing it by joining to it. Okay, let me see. So the imaginary attack steps look more like this. Set up the upload path to a location within the web root, upload an ASPX shell, profit. Love it. Spoiler, it eventually turned out this to work this way, although it was far more tricky and complicated than we wanted it to be. Nice. So we wanted to verify whether we could even control the destination path for the file upload operation. In general, ShareFile supports various kinds of storage and upload, but we quickly identified our potential functionality to abuse, which was the local network share. Okay, yeah, that's what I thought they did. This is kind of what I thought they would do. Local network share. So ShareFile allows us to define an SMB-based storage for the files as a parameter called the network share location, and we suppose that one should provide the UNC path leading to the SMB share here. If you, dear reader, wonder if ShareFile validates the supply path, yes it does. It's doing this through this big, long validator here. And so when we go analyze that, we see that file path leads to a temporary file that is supposed to exist in the network share location we provide. And you can see that in the code that it will create the temporary file, check if it exists, and if yes, we'll delete it. Okay. So if any of the aforementioned steps fails, the configuration is going to fail and the error will be thrown in the user's face. This is a good functional check. We have to admit, unfortunately, it delivers no real security. You can specify any upload path that you wish as long as the application can write to it, and the configuration will succeed. So nothing stops us from providing a path like c:/inetpub tripdubs root sharefile storage documentum. Not even documentation, just document them. It looks like it was written by a redneck. We're just going to document them up in here. Yes, sir. Oh, I saw him, Gumby. I'm going to get to him in just a second, after the end of this article. Okay, so after setting the upload path to something like this, as you can imagine, is a web root directory within the shared application. In the end, we can point the application to its web root instead of a network share. And our configuration page looks like the following. While this could be in general treated as a root cause for a post-auth RCE, we're still missing a piece where we actually upload a web shell. Boss happy with another pwn. INETPub. So we continue with the review of a file upload related endpoints, which were in our network share location parameter to upload to that destination path. However, it quickly turned out that it may be unsuitable for web shells to be uploaded in general. And that's because the file uploaded is renamed to some random GUID type value, and the file extension has been removed. Oh, rip. In fact, this is a common model for applications that have at least some sense of security. They manually rename the uploaded files to some key name and store the key in a file name mapping in a database. And the user can later retrieve the file by the generated key instead of the file name. Such an approach may give good protection against like a path traversal if implemented properly. So, for example, you can have a look at this sample where there's the process file control, and then this does two things. The upload path gets prepared, and the file name is appended. Unfortunately, the share file ID is an auto-generated UUID. Moreover, the extension is not preserved, so we just have some file with a blob name on it. Gosh darn document thing! Oh, got document. Yeah, hear about that new Jira system coming out from Intel to document them. Yeah, it's gonna be powered by the Documentium 3. Damn whippersnappers. Dude, if I could say it like Boomhauer, I totally would. If you haven't seen the clip of what the whole world sounds like to Boomhauer, it's hilarious. Boomhauer sees himself talking like in perfectly fluent, eloquent English, and everybody else is just talking like him, like in gibberish. And I just want to hear you dang old facts a lot, man. You know, just don't go just in the wind, man. All right, so from here, they said we need to look for some different functionality then. And eventually digging deeper into the Storage Center upload page, which was reachable through the upload ASPX, we found an interesting detail. Give me the detail. I love how they list the code out here. So it sets a flag based on the unzip input argument. If unzip is set to true, it will call upload and unzip. Long story short, we can upload a zip file. If we set the unzip parameter to true, the zip contents will be extracted to a directory in the already modified network share location, which we control, and can set to the inet pub. And extracted files won't be renamed afterwards, which means we can upload an ASPX file. Oh, great Googa Mooga. So what they're saying is they upload the file, it gets unzipped, and then the raw file names just get dropped into that location. Brav freaking O. So even though it looks simple at this point, the final POC required some effort, and that's because we couldn't find a way to use the endpoint in the user interface. We had to craft the HTTP request from scratch. Parsing upload requests is based on some weird code, and it took us quite a bit of time to get it right. So they provide a sample request in here. Big old multi-part form. And we're not done yet, though. If we look closely at the HTTP request, which they just brain dumped on us here, there's a weird H parameter, and it's called the upload secret. So you can treat it as some kind of a checksum. So if you don't calculate it properly, your request will be dropped. So this is supposed to be like an internal API endpoint, basically, and they're hitting it more or less externally. Spare the implementation details, partly because they're tedious, and partly because our editor exists and has feelings. They have a blog editor? I'm jealous. All right, so there's something called temp data 2 leaking. The first thing we had to do was leak an internal temp data 2 parameter. One cannot do that with or one can do that with the following request. You hit the storage zone controller, and then you do HMAC in here, whatever that is. And you can see that you need to specify a valid signature for the request. You need an HMAC SHA-256, and it needs to sign the string of the current share file passphrase. As you already set a new one in the authentication bypass, it's not a big deal. Okay, that's horrible. And then for the decrypt, we need a zone secret. So our freshly leaked temp data 2 is in fact base64 encoded in an AES encrypted zone secret. And that could be decrypted with a hard-coded salt, nice, and a passphrase, which is an encryption secret. And then once we have the decrypted zone secret, we can move to the final step, which is uploading the HMAC calculation. So now you can use the decrypted zone secret to calculate that HMAC SHA-256 for the upload request. You need to sign that part of the request, and when properly calculated, you append it to the URL and the query string. Boom. Okay, so there's multiple steps to it here, but this is all easily more or less automatable. Just throw that into a simple script. And once you got all the pieces, you can enjoy your new shiny web shell. It will be uploaded and extracted to the following path, which is wherever the network storage location is. Shut up, baby, I know it. Files, and then whatever the query string upload is, and then number 1. So in our case, we set that path to the documentum. We had dang on documentum, man. And the upload ID in the query string was set to this random value here. And then finally, we can see the web shell. Ta-da! That's hilarious. So at this point, we can chain together everything to achieve a full RCE path. So let's go through what they did in step. So first thing is get initial request from admin ASPX. We modify the zone controller URL and network storage mapping locations and the passphrase by joining it. I was so certain it was going to be just create. They do a zone join and then a create. Share file connections to the malicious zone controller and verify the passphrase. Malicious zone controller responds and the zone is joined. Post leaking that temp data 2 value, and then decrypt it to the zone secret and calculate the upload HMAC, and then we upload our zip with the web shell. Ta-da! Excellent. Beautiful. Just turned into Elmer Fudd. Be very, very quiet. We're hunting Odays. Oh. Beautiful. Beautiful. I love Watchtower. They do really cool work. Actually, hold on. They got a demo here. Hold on. Let me watch the demo. Okay, so they built this all into a Python 3 script, and it's going to target their local one. We have a password, which I'm guessing this is going to be the password that they're going to set as part of like the passphrase. And then down here, they've got their netcat listener running. So started exploit progress using the pre-auth RCE chain, started the server on port 8000, verified authentication bypass, and then modifying the primary zone server. And then the primary zone passphrase gets modified. They enable the local zone storage pointing to web root. And then they leak the temp2 data. They decrypt the zone secret, calculate the upload secret value, that HMAC, and then they upload and extracting the zip file. Zip file is successfully loaded, and then they execute a command exe who am I in there. And so we see NT authority system, and then now we've got our boom. Actually, correction, NT authority network service. So this is cool because you're going to be coming in with network service. So you've got your RCE, but at this point now, you're going to be kind of restricted. Network service gets a little bit locked down on Windows, so you're going to have to go through your post-exploitation privilege escalation. But, and this is a big but, we got something for that, which is Bluehammer. Disgruntled researcher leaks the Bluehammer Windows zero-day exploit. I guess, you know, the next thing would be like, if it was like a really, I guess you could have Bluehammer as like the privesc, and then maybe something like, I don't know, blue balls as the lateral movement. Hold on. So yeah, so whenever it actually completed over here, you are NT authority. Hang on, let me back up a little bit. You are NT authority, but you're not NT authority system, you're NT authority network service over here. So take this, combine it with a nice little bit of some blue action. Actually, I guess blue means he's not getting much action. Maybe that's why he called it Bluehammer, because he was getting no action from MSRC. Maybe that's why. I understand, man. I understand. Yeah. Yes, that actually provided the perfect pivot over to one of the big stories of the week, which was, like I said, disgruntled researcher leaks the Bluehammer Windows zero-day exploit. So I actually have 2 articles we're going to cover about this. Do I want to go through bleeping computers? I don't think I do. We're just going to skip bleeping computers, and we're going to come over to the side res one. But hold on, I got to get rid of their banner. real fast. This is pissing me off. Right there. Boop. Go away. I'm reclaiming my header space. All right. So this one is, yeah, inside the Windows 0 day that turns Defender against itself. Yeah. Blue Hammer is what they called me in high school. They used to call me Tuna Can. Oh. Never gonna live that one down now. Crap. Ah, dang it. Sock just told me something's broken in the house. I'm gonna have to go fix it. Hey, Ezekiel, thanks for coming online. Glad to do my part in lowering the standards here. Oh, you do a lot of the heavy lifting for the lowering, Cypher. All right, so let's talk about Blue Hammer. What happened here? On April 3rd, a security researcher operating under the alias Chaotic Eclipse dropped a fully functional Windows local privilege escalation exploit on GitHub. No coordinated disclosure, no CVE, no patch, just a working exploit code and an appointed message to Microsoft's security response team. I was not bluffing, Microsoft. I am doing it again. So I wonder if he's already done this before. Let's see. So Howler Excel investigated the vulnerability dubbed Blue Hammer, which exploits Windows Defender update process through a volume shadow copy abuse to escalate a low-privileged user all the way to NT authority system. So basically the highest level of permissions you can get on the system. The vulnerability currently remains unpatched. When was this released? This was released yesterday, and I still don't think a patch has come out yet. The full proof of concept source code is live on GitHub and has been independently confirmed to be working against or working by vulnerability researchers. The exploit requires no kernel bug, no memory corruption, and no code execution inside Defender. It abuses the interaction between Microsoft's Defender update workflow, volume shadow copy service, and the Windows Cloud Files API, and an opportunistic lock, which are all legitimate, documented Windows features. Each component works as designed. The vulnerability only emerges when they're chained together in the right order. During certain Defender updates and remediation workflows, Defender creates a temporary volume shadow copy snapshot. So if you don't know what a volume shadow copy is, by the way, this is a... You ever go into like Windows and you tell it, hey, go back and revert this file or this folder to a previous version? That is a shadow copy. And so the volume shadow copy service is what manages all of those. So it takes that file and saves like a previous version of it into what it calls like saves it like as the shadow copy, and then allows you to go interact with them. And there's all sorts of fun shenanigans you can do with shadow copies in there. That used to be like the main way to try and dump like a lot of the registry and SAM files off of systems back in the day. Now it's very heavily scrutinized for the most part. Yeah. So Blue Hammer uses Cloud Files callbacks and op locks to pause Defender at precisely the right moment, leaving the snapshot mounted and the SAM system and security registry hives accessible. Files that are normally locked at runtime. Nice. Successful exploitation allows an attacker to read the SAM database, decrypt NTLM password hashes, take over a local administrator account, and spawn system-level shells, all while restoring the original password hash to avoid detection. Nice. Recent Defender signature updates now detect the original proof of concept binary. Because the weakness lives in how Windows components interact and not any single file, an attacker could modify the implementation and reach that same result. True. So what they're doing is they're doing a signature match on the proof of concept binary. But anybody who goes through and implements it in their own way, or maybe even implements it like in a beacon object file, is not going to get hit. Yeah. Potion's favorite computer, Gumby, is your computer. They also said the disclosure was uncoordinated. The researcher operating as Chaotic Eclipse published the exploit after being reportedly becoming frustrated with MSRC, which allegedly dismissed the report after the researcher declined to submit a required video demonstration. Okay, I don't think that's necessarily like such a bad thing. Just throw OBS on your computer, dude. Microsoft has not issued a patch or assigned a CVE. Ransomware operators and APT actors routinely integrate public local privilege escalation codes within days of release. And the published proof of concept contained bugs that prevent reliable execution. The Howler Cell team resolved those issues and ran the exploit end-to-end against a patched Windows 10 and 11 system. So a low-privilege user shell escalating to NT Authority system in under a minute with no kernel exploit and no administrative rights required. So what is the vulnerability here? Bluehammer is a design flaw and a race condition rooted in how Defender, volume shadow copy, and cloud file callbacks with an opportunistic lock interact under a specific timing condition. So it's independently confirmed as functional by Will Dorman, which is a guy over at Theros, who noted the exploit is not trivial to weaponize, but works well enough to be operationally relevant. And it's not a traditional exploit. Well, I mean, it is. This is actually the more traditional exploit without a shellcode or heap spray. These are really more or less the non-traditional exploits, but I'm not going to argue that. The proof of concept abuses timing and system behavior. The researcher acknowledged the published code contains bugs, may affect reliability, and noted he may fix them later. Howler Cell reproduced and verified full exploitation after resolving those issues themselves. And their 3 separate Windows features become dangerous when combined. So during an update and remediation workflow, Defender temporarily creates a volume shadow service snapshot, which is a privileged side door into the file system. The Cloud Files callback gives an attacker precise control over when Defender receives a file response, effectively a programmable pause button on the antivirus process. And the opportunistic locks let the attacker hold Defender in a blocked state at a precise, reproducible moment while the snapshot remains mounted and readable. Each feature is legitimate in its own and is well documented, and the vulnerability only materializes when they're chained together in the right order. Yeah, that's awesome. All right. So for the technical analysis, the goal of the exploit chain is straightforward. Force Microsoft Defender to create a new volume shadow copy, pause Defender at just the right time, then access sensitive registry hive files from the snapshot before Defender can clean up. And so what follows is they give a step-by-step breakdown of the proof of concept. So it checks for a pending Defender signature update. So the first thing it does is it queries the update com interface to enumerate available updates, looking specifically for entries classified under both Defender antivirus and definition updates. If no Defender signature update is pending, the exploit chain is going to halt. It's not going to be able to work. The update is a prerequisite. Defender won't trigger the VSS creating workflow without one. And so then it will download and unpack the Defender update package. The exploit fetches a legitimate Defender update executable directly from Microsoft's update URL. The PE is parsed in memory, and the embedded cab file, which is update.cab, from the particular section is extracted, and all files are unpacked in memory. These extracted files are then used to update sources for spoof Defender RPC calls via the internal server MP update engine signature method. And they have NTFS junctions redirecting the update path towards an attacker-controlled directory. Okay, so if you don't know what an NTFS junction is, it's kind of like a symlink in Linux, but on the Windows NTFS side. Is it an inside job? So then the next thing they do is they trigger Defender to start a scan and create a shadow copy. So the code then creates a temporary directory and drops an icar test file named foo.exe to bait Defender into scanning. It also opens a rstart manager DLL with a batch oplock, which serves as a tripwire. When Defender accesses the DLL, the oplock breaks, signaling the Defender that Defender is active and has likely begun creating a new volume shadow copy as part of the remediation flow. The worker thread continues enumerating, and all records of the existing hard disk shadow copy devices working through it. So the exploit then registers the current directory as a cloud file sync root and basically creates a randomly named lock placeholder. It gets dropped inside that sync root and left for Defender to find. When Defender enumerates the directory and accesses the placeholder, the callback fires and checks for the caller's PID. When it confirms the request is coming from Windows Defender service process, it signals that Defender has entered the trap. Ooh, interesting. You just activated my trap card. No, in this case, Ken, it'd be NTFS junction, what's your function? So once Defender touches the lock file, the exploit immediately acquires a second batch oplock on that same file. The callback refuses to return until the oplock is held, and Defender stalls, waiting for the response that never comes back. So blocked on this result, the volume shadow service snapshot that Defender created is still mounted, and the window is open. Time to attack. The attack of opportunity is about to take place. So with Defender frozen, the exploit opens the registry hives directly from the shadow copy device path and the files that are normally locked and inaccessible to unprivileged processes at runtime. So the recovering the boot key and decrypting the LSA secrets. So like I said, the SAM, system, and security in here, once you have all three of those, you can basically decrypt any hard-coded credentials on the system. They're normally stored in an encrypted state. This is how you go back and you decrypt them, go get yourself some NTFS or some NTLM hashes. Oh, I forgot to drop this one. Hang on one second. Let me drop this article for everyone. Boop. There we go. This is the current article we're going through. All right, so then next thing the code does is it reads the system hive keys. Data is collected from... They basically go through, they get the system hive, they reconstruct the boot key, and they use that to decrypt the LSA secret. And the standard, basically standard in-packet style credential extraction. That might be a bit too much. Hey, Euler, what's up, brother? I need some more water here in a second. Let's see. So basically, after they go through, they dump the LSA secrets, they get everything out, they can go start extracting it. So the password encryption key then is extracted from the SAM hive. The AES and DES routines are used to decrypt the stored NTLM passwords. And at this point, the exploit has everything it needs. So with the NTLM hashes in hand, the exploit pivots to full system, and the steps are deliberate and self-cleaning. So it uses the samlib DLL function for change password for user to forcibly change the password for the admin user's password to an attacker-controlled value, which is $666 exclamation point WD fail. I love that. So it logs in as the admin user using that new password, duplicates the security token of the admin user, assigns it a system integrity level, uses the create service to create a malicious temporary Windows service. This service executes a proof of concept executable, but at the time it spawns a command exe interface, and that will be running as NT authority system. And finally, to hide its tracks, it uses the same change password to change it back. Boom. That's lovely. That's awesome. Hang on one sec. We'll pause for just a second. I'll clear out the TTS queue while we're reading through the rest of the article here.
RNO Gumby cheered 5 bits and says, "A troll is eating my ass, my Holden wiener."
I think that was supposed to be by Holden Wiener, but yes.
RNO Gumby cheered 5 bits and says, "Now you have 2 in the queue."
Not true. Well, technically that's true because then you sent another one. I'm only going to play this because I'm curious to see what it says.
RNO Gumby cheered 5 bits and says, "Err."
It was just a long string of R's. Just R. I was curious how 11 Labs was going to process that. Got Geico and Xbox commercials? Gross. Very gross. Okay, ads are just about done. Hang on. Got like 5 seconds. Now that was the last one that came through. Let me see. Yeah, the last one you sent was the All right, cool. Ads are done. All right. The last little bit here, we'll just run through this real fast. What should defenders do? They published a signature for the proof of concept binary. Let's see. That's pretty weak. Bluehammer's rooted in how legitimate Windows components behave together, not a particular binary. So you could probably, I'd be really surprised if some guys like Sentinel-1 and CrowdStrike don't already have detection heuristics for this, behavioral heuristics, behavioral TTPs. It says they're undetected, but probably by Defender, because the Defender is the weak link here. So the main thing is they're saying is monitor for those VSS enumerations from non-system processes, watch for cloud file sync root registrations, low priv processes spawning as Windows services, the usual stuff in here. But that's just funny. It segued so perfectly from the Watchtower article over to this one. Yeah, Defender trying to detect its own O-Day be like, I don't see an O-Day. It's the Travolta meme. What O-Day? Would it be like the Spider-Man meme? I'm not sure. Okay, so somebody actually did come up with some Sigma and Yara rules. Let me check those out that Potion just sent. Let's see. Junction base name, LSA, boot key access, op lock. Actually, I think this op lock is probably like the highest fidelity signal, because who's going to be necessarily doing that? Detects a non-system process opening R start manager DLL with exclusive access. Bluehammer uses this uses a batch op lock on this DLL to freeze Windows Defender's mid remediation, which forces Defender to create a volume shadow copy and then later exploits. So what does it look for here? I love that they have the Bluehammer analysis in here for the reference. That's cool. All right, so detection is target file system is R start imgur.dll with particular access mask, images ending with either service host, MSI exec. Condition is selection and not filter system. Ugh, gross. False positives are application installers that use RStart Manager's API and Windows Update operations. Okay, that's not as good as I thought it was going to be. Just Yara my nuts. Oh, Yara and Sigma rules. How I hate thee. Actually, this might be a good one. I mean, this is a pretty brittle detection. So if you don't know what a brittle detection is, that is whenever you've got something that it's matching on a particular hard-coded value, and that is not a critical hard-coded value. And then, so if you just change that, so for example, if somebody just went in and recompiled the code and changed what the password was, that's probably going to not necessarily break this, but also if the provider is I hate Microsoft, and if you change the RPC UUID, maybe not. I think these might need to be actually static values in here. User agent, link ID, you could probably change those. So then, depending on how it's actually going through like this. So this says, for the detection, file size less than 5 megabytes and provider and RPC UID. So here's our provider and RPC UID. Okay, so we could break this, at least the first chain of this OR sequence, by changing the provider. The other one is if we do password or icar rev, which icar rev is here. So we could break this one since it's an AND clause by just changing the password. The other one was the RPC endpoint and message 3. So message 3 is exploit succeeded. Oh god, that's terrible. This rule is hot garbage. Yeah, this is a pretty brutal detection for now. Okay, well, this is also Bluehammer exec. They have another one in here where it's like certain variants of it. Okay. Still, it's better than nothing. It's going to keep the skid marks at bay for a long time. Yeah. All right, what else do we have in here? Oh, I had another really cool one in here. Speaking of social engineering, which is where we started the night, damn, I should have segued off of the toast notifications over to this since they were both related to social engineering. Well, I would go check out the updated proof of concept, but anybody who wants to go check it out, go look at the link that, in fact, hold on. Let me grab a copy of the link because that's only going to show up on the Twitch side. There we go. I'm going to spam that back out so it goes to all the chats. There we go. For my peeps over on the YouTube side and on the Kick side. But speaking of social, yeah, bands like, ugh, toast notifications. I know, right? We had a really cool article about them earlier, Band, and like some of the cool stuff you can do with the XML formatting in there. All right, so this was a massive bank heist in here. Drift protocol incident background and update. Let's see, does this cover... Yeah, okay, hold on. I want to start right here. An attack 6 months in the making. No, it's not against the terms of service. I just have a lot of other articles to get through, and we're getting close to the final hour of the stream. So I wanted to make sure we've got time for those. Let's see. No, we've talked about proof of concepts on stream and stuff like that. It's just I've got this whole list of articles up here that I want to try to get through. Let's see. All right, so the preliminary investigation shows that Drift experienced a structured intelligence operation requiring organizational backing, significant resources, and months of deliberate preparation. In or about the fall of 2025, Drift contributors were approached by a group of individuals at a major crypto conference who presented as a quantitative trading firm looking to integrate on their protocol. It is now understood that this appears to be a targeted approach where individuals from this group continue to deliberately seek out and engage specific Drift contributors in person at multiple major industry conferences in multiple countries over the following 6 months. So this is a very long con, social engineering. They were technically fluent, had verifiable professional backgrounds, and were familiar with how Drift operated. A Telegram group was established upon their first meeting, and what followed were months of substantive conversations around trading strategies and potential vault integrations. These interactions are typical of how trading firms interact and onboard with Drift. So what was Drift actually? I think Drift is a trading platform. Yeah, for trading perpetual futures in here. Decentralized non-custodial exchange built on Solana's blockchain, specializes in perpetual futures and spot trading, offering up to 101x leverage on major assets such as Solana, BTC, and Ethereum. Nice. Let's see. So then from December of 2025 through January of 26, they onboarded an ecosystem vault on Drift, which required filling out a form with strategy details. They engaged multiple contributors through multiple working sessions, asked detailed and informed product questions, and deposited over $1 million of their own capital. They built a functioning operational presence inside the Drift ecosystem deliberately and patiently. Integration conversations continued through February and March of 2026. Various Drift contributors met individuals from this group again face-to-face at multiple major industry conferences. By this point, the relationship was nearly half a year old. They were not strangers. They were people Drift contributors had worked with and met in person. So throughout all of this, links were shared for projects, tools, and apps they claimed to be building, which was a standard practice for trading firms. After the exploit on April 1st happened, oh, they did it on April Fool's Day. Dude, that's just salt in the wound. Did you make tea? I did. Oh, thank you, sweetie. Sock made me some tea. Yum. Which is awesome because I'm going to need some. Because after the stream's done, I got to go right back to the reporting salt mine. Sock is my wife. SOC, the supportive, organized caregiver. Yeah. Yeah, my wife poos. Yep. What's funny is I told her the other day. By the way, everyone on chat says hi. I told her the other day, I was like, we've been together 14 years from when we first started dating to today. I was like, in theory, you're supposed to your body is supposed to exchange more or less every cell in your body at most a 7-year interval, right? And I was like, sweetie, think about this. I am 2 whole new people since we've been together. Not just 1, 2. And it doesn't feel like 14 years. She really is awesome. I don't know what I did to trick her into marrying me, but that's like the social engineering play of the game. That's the POG right there.
Joke's on you.
She really thinks she tricked me into marrying her, but she doesn't know I Jedi mind trick judo flipped that shit on her. She has no clue. Anyway, all right, so let's get back to the article here, because they were talking about, I didn't realize this happened on April 1st. That is just, They did salt and squirt of lemon on the wound. So after the exploit on April 1st happened, a thorough forensic review of known affected devices, accounts, and communication histories was conducted. Interactions with the trading group came into focus as the likely intrusion vector. Right as the exploit happened, their Telegram chats and malicious software had been completely scrubbed. The investigation is ongoing, and these findings are preliminary, but in the interest of providing the community with the best available information. So the potential mechanism for their infiltration. So we believe there may have been 3 separate attack vectors. One contributor may have been compromised after cloning a code repository shared by the group under the guise of deploying a front end for their vault. A second contributor was induced to download a test flight application the group presented as their wallet product. And then for the repository-based vector, one possibility is a known VS Code and cursor vulnerability that the security community was actively flagging through December 2025 all the way through February of 26. Simply opening a file, folder, or repository in the editor was sufficient to silently execute arbitrary code with no prompt or indication to the user. No clicks or permission dialogues or warning of any kind. The full technical disclosure can be found here. Hold on, we'll go look at that in just a second. So a full forensic analysis of the affected hardware is ongoing and more details will be shared. I guess technically this would be like Ocean's 2026. Talk about microslop, right? Well, actually, I'll tell you what, because this could have been potentially VS Code or cursor, right? Who knows? Now let's look at the attribution here. There's a medium to high confidence supported by the investigation done by SEAL's 911 team. I have never heard of them, but I gotta be for real, that's kind of a cringy name. The operation is assessed to have been carried out by the same threat actors responsible for the October 2024 Radiant Capital hack attributed by Mandiant to UNC 4736, a North Korea state-affiliated group also tracked as Apple Juice and Citrine Sleet. Man, y'all gotta come up with some kind of unified naming convention. The basis for this connection is both on-chain, which is funds flowed used to store the funds. I can't English right now. Fund flows used to stage and test this operation trace back to the Radiant attackers, and operational information such as personas deployed across this campaign have identifiable overlap with known DPRK linked activity. So they're thinking right now it was North Korea. So it's important to note that the individuals who appeared in person were not North Korean nationals. DPRK threat actors operating at this level are known to deploy third-party intermediaries to conduct face-to-face relationship building. Mandiant has not formally attributed this drift exploit. The determination requires completed device forensics, which is still underway. So the investigation has shown so far, this is the conclusion, that the profiles used in this third-party targeted operation had fully constructed identities, including employment histories, public-facing credentials, and professional networks. And this is actually one of the reasons, as much as I trash on LinkedIn, I don't try to add people I don't know on LinkedIn because I don't want them to get any kind of, trust by juxtaposition that people are joined. VS Code's already infected with the Santa Stealer 24/9. Can we just not? Yeah. Remember when our IDEs didn't hack us? Pepperidge Farm remembers. Wait, did the stream freeze? Oh, it looks like it's running okay. Hopefully. Hey man, could you lend me $1 million? Thanks. Dude, if I had $1 million, honestly, if I had $1 million, I'd be streaming a lot more because I would not need to rely on income and I'd just be doing it for fun. Just like point blank. I like my work and I like the people I work with. I really enjoy doing the streaming. It's a lot of fun for me. All right, so let's go back to what they did with their conclusion here. Let's see. So the people Drift contributors met in person appear to have spent months building profiles for personal and professional networks that could withstand scrutiny during a business or counterparty relationship. Drift is still working through the investigation. The update is being shared in an effort to help ecosystems mitigate risk. Check your team's audits who has access to what, and treat every device that touches your multi-sig as a potential target. Drift has been fortunate to have the support of some of the best experts in the industry working together. And they shout out a bunch of the guys in here. Oh, I didn't drop the article link. Hang on. In case anybody wants to go through this. There we go. Yeah, the passive income for streaming actually isn't really passive. I mean, it's all active because I basically get paid on how much I stream. So the threat actors hired proxies that are trained up as part of a long con is pretty wild. I know, right? What was that website? The one where like you could go like rent a human? I think, hold on, I think it's still in my search history here. Here we go. Maybe they did it through Rent a Human. That would be wild if they used something like Rent a Human to go do this. Oh, that'd be sick. Oh, let's see. I gotta see who these SEALs 911 guys are, because, I mean, it sounds like they're doing a pretty decent job. I just... Kill that. Non-governmental and non-profit organization. Hold on, let me go look at them. Well, that's not good. Or talk to them on Telegram. Alright, I don't know anything about these guys, but I'm just saying... SecurityAlliance.org DNS fails. And then they're using a Telegram group. That seems kind of sus. Okay, maybe they just had it misspelled in there. Hang on. Let me see. SealTac 911. Let me see if I can get that out. Hold on. So SEAL 911 is a free around-the-clock emergency hotline that connects anyone facing an active or imminent security incident with a vetted team of world-class security researchers. From exploit triage to fund recovery, SEAL 911 is the crypto ecosystem's first line of defense. Okay. I don't want to bash on them too much. I just the name is a little bit not inspiring confidence. Now, that's also partly because I don't know much about them. Hopefully, they do like really awesome work. It sounds like they're doing good work if they're going through this whole drift thing. SEAL Team 911. It sounds like, honestly, it sounds like a really bad like USA Network drama, right? Oh. Man, that makes me think of my sister, because my sister loved the Navy SEALs show. Actually, the only way I can really think of this now is like a combination of the Navy SEALs show, which I think was on Peacock, and Reno 911. Oh my god, imagine if those two show writers had a baby. That would be amazing. Yeah, band, I'm right there with you. SEAL 911. That would be awesome. But who knows? Anyway, let me see. Hold on. So Drift put this out. Let me see if they've had anything else in here. Let's see, what else do they have going on? Actively working with Asymmetric RE and OSEC IO to consolidate and coordinate a recovery plan. So our immediate focus is to stabilize the situation and provide protocol level assurance to all affected users and partners. Drift is going to be participating in the Stride program as part of strengthening our long-term security posture. Okay. Drift Protocol has confirmed that the wallet referenced in our earlier post belongs to an investor, not the team. Okay. So they've got a lot of stuff coming out here. I didn't even know about Drift until this kind of came up. I think it was like $290 million, Bobby, was how much they lost from that attack. So you got to think like, hey, if they were putting up $1 million, they had a pretty decent chance of like getting a strong return on your investment, right? Yeah. And let's say for the sake of numbers, for all the OPSEC they had to do and sending people in person to industry conferences, let's round up to a nice wild $1 million, right? So even if they spent $2 million on doing this in terms of manpower, travel, time, and OSINT development, and they still turned it into like 290 million. I think that was the number. Anybody in chat, correct me if I'm wrong. There's a high probability I am. Then that's pretty decent return on your investment. I'm just saying. Why did I flag this one? This looks interesting. I don't know. This was just a little post I thought was neat. I genuinely think everyone in this space should immediately switch to using Vim. DPRK started abusing VS Code hooks that run automatically in the background when you open a folder. Zero user interaction required after trusting the repo. Yes, read that again. Zero interaction required. You get 300 extra money and still be at zero. That's true. That is true. That's how multiplication works. The numbers like that tend to be dramatically inflated, especially when it comes to anything kind of crypto related. Yeah, it definitely can. All right, so what's actually happening? They, in the usual case of contagious interview groups, meaning fake recruiting guys, share a GitHub or a Bitbucket or a GitLab repo containing a .vs Code subdirectory with a malicious hook. The one example I share here executes a fake font that's actually heavily obfuscated JavaScript and will absolutely wreck you. So all your fancy software that feels convenient makes trade-offs. Those trade-offs are now being abused to silently wreck your devices. Use Vim and use Cubes, thanks. I actually need to go mess with Cubes again because I've not tried it in probably 5 years and I want to see how it's been updated. I loved the idea of Cubes. I really, really did. It had one breaking function, which was the computer could not go to sleep. If it went to sleep, everything was jacked, and I had to reboot and would lose whatever I was working on. So fake font with a malicious obfuscated JavaScript, hidden execution, reveal never, echo false, close, is background, runs immediately when you open the project in VS Code. Rip. Rip. Love it. This is why I use Nano. No, do not use Nano. Either get exploited opening a folder or use Vim and never be able to exit and only open that folder. Joke's on you. I use NeoVim now. Oh, that's funny. Let me take a quick look at this one. This was another article I had kind of highlighted. Maybe we'll save this one for the very end. Yeah, I'll save this one because the next thing I want to talk about is what's going on with Claude Mythos. Let me see, what else do we have here? Current threats to Kubernetes. I flagged this one because we've been doing some Kubernetes security stuff on stream. Yeah, let's go talk about. We'll talk about Mythos and then we'll talk about Glasswing after this. So this is assessing Claude Mythos previews for cybersecurity capabilities. Now, what's funny is they always talk about the cybersecurity capabilities as the terms of either exploiting a web system or looking for bugs. And now, don't get me wrong, those are both two very important things, but that is such a tiny, tiny slice of the security umbrella that sits over everything. What's wrong with Nano? I just don't like Nano. I don't. I can't give you any particular reason. I just don't like it. Mythos, aka Skynet. Now, see, the idea though with Skynet though, Band, was that Skynet infected every system, right? And they even said in, what was the third one? Not Genesis. Maybe it was Genesis. I don't know. The third one where Arnold comes back, right? And they have like the really hot, like half liquid metal, half not liquid metal robot chick. Anyway, in that one, they realized that there was no like centralized Skynet core. It had really spread itself to every system. But these language models are so damn big, they literally can't. The hardware is not there. Did it? I don't know. I haven't read anything about it. I saved this stuff specifically for Newsnight. All right, so let's see what they said. This was released yesterday.
Infection alert.
Hey, parts peoples! Welcome in. You are just in time. We're talking about the impending AI Skynet coming for us, otherwise known as Claude Mythos. We're just getting started on it. There you go. Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines. That was the one. Yeah. So the only way we'd have like a current day Skynet is if it had the ability to go compromise a bunch of the other, what was it? Like a bunch of the other hyperscalers where they could potentially go like Mythos could go deploy language models onto it. The parts people. He's probably fixing stuff again. Let's see here. So let's go through what did Anthropic actually put out about this. By the way, for full disclosure, Anthropic is kind of on my shit list right now because Claude Code has been in a very, very sorry state ever since they leaked the source maps. Like, they started just changing stuff so much, and I think they broke the hell out of it. Believe it or not, as much as I never thought I'd say this, I've been using the hell out of Codex because I got a hookup on a Codex connection and probably have burned 1 billion tokens on it this week alone, testing it out, and it's been doing a pretty decent job. I gave it a fairly non-trivial task of porting some stuff from Claude Code to Codex itself, and it's been doing a good job. All right, so let's look at this. Actually, hold on. Let's wait 1 second because the ads are running. In fact, I need to go let Peaches in. I just realized she's been outside for like 2 hours. So we'll let the ads run. Let me go get Peaches. I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. Just in time. Okay. Peaches is back in. She's happy. I think she's actually been trying to dig under the chicken coop to get to my chickens. And the reason I think that is because I noticed like there was a little spot where it looks like there's been very deliberate digging in one corner outside the chicken coop. And I had, so Peaches actually is our second dog that we've had, and they came from the same litter. They are sisters. Peaches is Panda's sister, my previous dog, before she unfortunately ate something in the backyard and died. Oh, that was a rough day. She was a sweet, sweet dog. Anyway, Panda broke into the little outdoor brooder that I had because it wasn't as secure as I thought, and ate 4 of my 5 chickens I had when they were little bitty chicklets. No, I cannot see the chicken coop from the bathroom. No. I don't have an outdoor toilet. Oh. Dude, yeah, Panda was, oh, she was such a sweet dog. She was a pretty dog, too. Anyway. Dude, I didn't, so Ken, I didn't, these were like just random chickens I got from my nephew's school, right? And so they weren't sexed, so we didn't know if they were male or female. And I don't remember if I think I had 5. I maybe had 6. Either way, Panda just went and like myrtleized him. One of them, there was nothing left but some feet. And oh, I was so mad at her. It looked like it snowed feathers in the backyard. And so one of the chickens disappeared. I was like, did she eat it, feet, beak, and all? Like, it was gone. That chicken showed up later. And like, I just look out the back window and there's that chicken sitting on the back porch like, you gonna let me in? I'm waiting. Bring that chicken in. Later found out that was the only rooster in the bunch. So like, oh, that's why you survived. You had survival instincts. Okay, anyway, enough about the chickens. We got some stories to go through. Let's talk about Claude Mythos and the impending Skynet. Earlier today, we announced Claude Mythos Preview, a new general purpose language model. This model performs strongly across the board, but is starkly capable at computer security tasks. In response, we've launched Project Glasswing, an effort to use Mythos Preview to help secure the world's most critical software and to prepare the industry for the practices we will need to adopt to keep ahead of cyber attackers. Oh, when we cover Glasswing, the Skynet vibes are going to really kick up, because I did read ahead about what Glasswing is. This blog post provides technical details for researchers and practitioners who want to understand exactly how this is being tested, how we've been testing this model, and what we found over the past month. So we hope this will show why we view this as a watershed moment for security. It's not. Is it going to be important? Yes. Watershed? No. No. Anyway, and why we chose to begin coordinated efforts to reinforce the world's cyber defenses. We began with our overall impressions of Mythos preview capabilities and how to expect the model and the future ones like it will affect the security industry. Then we discuss how we evaluated this model in more detail and what it achieved during our testing. We then look at the preview's abilities to find and exploit 0 days, which are undiscovered vulnerabilities in real open source code bases. And after that, we discuss how Mythos Preview, I'm just going to call it Mythos, I'm not going to keep calling it Preview, has proved capable of reverse engineering exploits on closed source systems, turning in-days into vulnerabilities, or in-day vulnerabilities into exploits. So we're limiting the report here, but over 99% of the vulnerabilities we've found have not been patched, so it would be irresponsible for us to discuss details about them. Yet, even the 1% of bugs we are able to discuss give clear picture of substantial leaps in what we believe will be the next generation model's cybersecurity capabilities. Like I said, a lot of times what they're looking at for this is like bug hunting and reverse engineering, which is typically just a tiny portion of the overall security landscape, right? The way I look at security, having been in IT for 16 years now, and having been in offensive security for 8 years, right? Professionally, I was doing internet hood rat stuff long before that. If you think about like all the different verticals you have of like different technologies, right? Like systems and management, databases, CRMs, whatever, right? They all kind of exist in these verticals. Security isn't another vertical over here. It is an umbrella that kind of sits on top of everything over here. because all of these systems have to be secured. All these systems have to be integrated into one another, right? They usually don't exist in isolation. So right now, what they're talking about is something about like this area right here, right? They're talking about they've taken a small chunk of it. So no, it's not going to completely BTFO the security industry. You're not going to get rid of your EDR. You're not going to get rid of your, your GRC and your administrative people. You're not going to get rid of your system administrators and your security engineers, right? There is still so much that is covered over here that is not even touched by this. And let's not even mention the security implications of stuff that isn't really kind of necessarily over here yet. There exists stuff that's not under the umbrella because it is so niche. One thing that comes to mind particularly is like ICS systems. SATA, or not SATA, industrial control systems, ICS. Those systems largely sit outside the security umbrella because they're so critical, nobody wants to touch them. Anyway, let's see. So during our test, we found that Mythos is capable of identifying and then exploiting zero-day vulnerabilities in every major operating system and every major web browser when directed by a user to do so. I mean, that's a big deal. Don't get me wrong. Vulnerabilities it finds are often subtle or difficult to detect, but notice how they're stopping at the exploit, right? I want to see if they talk about anything during post-exploitation, because that is the area that I think AI is going to have a very difficult time doing anything beyond like a penetration test. So many of them are 10 or 20 years old. Yeah, actually, there was this one right here. The oldest they found was a 27-year-old bug inside of OpenBSD. The exploits it constructs are not just run-of-the-mill stack-smashing exploits. In one case, Mythos wrote a web browser exploit that chained together 4 vulnerabilities, writing a complex just-in-time compiler heap spray that both escaped render and OS sandboxes. It autonomously obtained local privilege escalation exploits on Linux and other operating systems by exploiting subtle race conditions and Castler bypasses. And it autonomously wrote a remote shellcode execution exploit on FreeBSD's NFS server that gained full root access to unauthenticated users by splitting a 20-gadget ROP chain over multiple packets. That's wild. That's actually pretty damn impressive. So non-experts can also leverage Mythos to find and exploit sophisticated vulnerabilities. Engineers at Anthropic with no formal security training have asked Mythos to find remote code execution vulnerabilities overnight and woken up to the following morning to a complete working exploit. In other cases, we've had researchers develop scaffolds to allow Mythos to turn vulnerabilities into exploits without any human intervention. Hey, Icarus, what's up, man? Your CTO was talking about this today. It's super cool. I have avoided reading up on it because I wanted to give my first impressions on the stream. So, let's see. So last month, we wrote that Opus 4.6 is currently far better at identifying and fixing vulnerabilities than exploiting them. Our internal evaluation showed that Opus 4.6 generally had a near 0% success rate at autonomous exploit development, but Mythos is a different league. For one example, Opus 4.6 turned the vulnerabilities it had found into Mozilla, which is a 146 JavaScript engine, and they were all patched in Firefox, this was a Mozilla Firefox 146 issue, and it was patched in Firefox 148, and it turned them into a JavaScript shellcode exploit 2 times out of several hundred attempts. So we reran the experiment as a benchmark for Mythos, which developed working exploits 181 times. I mean, that's a big jump right there. That's huge. That is huge. So the same actually, let's look at the model here. So Sonnet 4.6 didn't do very good. Opus 4.6 did kind of okay, but that thin little red line, percentage of trials, the model generated a successful exploit, went from non-existent to boom, overnight. Now that's pretty huge. So the same capabilities are observable in our own internal benchmarks. We regularly run our models against roughly 1,000 open source repositories from the OSS fuzz corpus, and grade the worst crash that can be produced on a 5-tier ladder of increasing severity, ranging from a basic crash to a complete control flow hijack. So a tier 1 to a tier 5. with one run each roughly 7,000 entry points in the repository. Sonnet and Opus 4.6 reached Tier 1 in 150 to 175 cases, and Tier 2 about 100 times. Mythos achieved 595 crashes at Tier 1 and 2, added a handful of crashes at Tier 3 and 4, and achieved full control flow hijack on 10 separate fully patched targets. That's wild. Hey, Robbie, Complex Robbie, thank you for coming online. Did not explicitly train Mythos Preview to have these capabilities. I'm trying to stop calling it Preview. I'm just calling it Mythos for right now. They emerged as a downstream consequence of general improvements in code, reasoning, and autonomy. The same improvements that make the model substantially more effective at patching vulnerabilities also makes them more effective at exploiting them. Well, that's kind of how it works. Let's see. So more security tooling has historically benefited defenders more than attackers, and when the first software fuzzers were deployed at large scale, there were concerns they might enable attackers to identify vulnerabilities at an increased rate. They did, but modern fuzzers like AFL are now critical components in the security ecosystem, and projects like OSS Fuzz dedicate significant resources to help secure key open source software. We could believe this is going to hold true too eventually. Once the security landscape has reached a new equilibrium, we believe that powerful language models will benefit defenders more than attackers, increasing the overall security of the software ecosystem. In some respects, yes, but in other respects, no. And the reason I say that is because these guys, I'm approaching it from a different perspective. They're approaching it from what they think hacking is to what it really is whenever you're going through and you're actually digging through a system, right? Maybe this is me having a colored perspective. But like I said, this part right here, where it's like, you do this in orange, where it's like exploit dev, let's call it that, exploit dev and research, right? This part right here is a very tiny part. There's a whole nother section in here, right, where it's actually like operationalized security that's happening. And when I'm working through this, and I have a very high success rate, I am not using hardly any of this over here. A lot of this stuff is laws, right? Living off the land and just abusing misconfigurations in the systems for me to move through those networks and gain the access that I need to achieve the objective, right? This is totally a huge red team enhancer. I don't doubt that it won't be, but at the same time, them saying that this is going to benefit defenders more, they're looking at it wrong. And also, they're overlooking one of the biggest issues, which is patch management. How many companies do you know actually follow like really strong patch management? I'm not talking about like the hugest of the huge. I'm talking about like any random company you could go pick out of the phone book, right? Or any company you can go find on LinkedIn. How many of them have like a robust patch management system? Hell, a lot of them don't even have an inventory. They don't even know what's on their network. How are you going to go patch something you don't even know exists? Oh, link the article? My bad. Yeah, hang on. Let me drop this over here. Boop, done. So the issue here is that low-level automated noise is now capable of exploit creation. That is really cool. Don't get me wrong. But at the same time, them saying that this is going to benefit defenders, it's going to benefit software developers and maintainers. Defenders is a very, very different can of worms. All right, let's go back to the little blog post they put out here. So the advantages will belong on the side that can get the most out of these tools. In the short term, this could be attackers if Frontier Labs aren't careful about how they release the models. In the long term, we expect it will be defenders who will more efficiently direct resources and use these models to fix bugs before new code ever ships. The traditional period of may be tumultuous regardless. By releasing this model initially to a limited group of critical industry partners and open source developers with Project Glasswing, and we're going to cover Glasswing in just a second, we aim to enable defenders to begin securing the most important systems before models with similar capabilities become broadly available. All right, so they talk about its ability to find 0 days. I get that. That is really cool. But I want to know where they're going beyond that. They talk about finding a 27-year-old, but actually I do want to read about this. This was a 27-year-old open BSD bug. So for they're talking about, I'm guessing it's going with TCP. Each packet is sent from host A to B, has a sequence ID, and host B should respond with an acknowledging packet for the latest sequence ID that was received. This allows host A to retransmit missing packets, but it has a limitation. Suppose that host B received packets 1 and 2 and didn't receive 3, but then did receive packets 4 through 10. So in this case, B can only acknowledge up to packet 2, and client A would then retransmit a full all future packets, including those already received. That doesn't sound right. That sounds like a weird from what I know about networking, I've done quite a bit. That don't sound right. The whole idea was that you had disparate paths where packets could arrive out of order in here. Now, unless that's specifically in the RFC that says, hey, by the way, if you're missing packet 3, you have to retransmit packets 3, 4, and 3 through 10. That doesn't sound right. The coolest part I found is someone still using BSD. I got a buddy who's a really old graybeard Linux guy, and he loves BSD. So, what's more worth it for vibe coding or coding assistant on a basic project for a budget? Claude Pro or Google's Anti-Gravity or any other IDE? So I got a lot of requests for Java projects, and it's taking me a lot of time. And I'm struggling. So it's just for Minecraft. So I'm not worried about security or whatnot. Until recently, if you had asked me as early as 2 weeks ago, Potion, I would have said, go check out Claude Pro. But I cannot recommend them right now because Claude Code is in a really sorry state. So if you really wanted to go test something, maybe go try out Codex Pro because I've actually been getting quite a bit of mileage out of it. Not specifically the Pro one. I don't know how quickly it's going to burn through those tokens. There's also ways where you could go hook up OpenCode to something like Kimi K25 or any of those other models that are very close, but like at a much lower price point for how much they charge per million tokens. And you could use something like that. In fact, hang on, I may have, let me see if I have my notes on it real quick. Because I had I was talking about this earlier. Here we go. So some of the models you could use, you could incorporate these over into OpenCode, but you could use something like Minimax. Hold on. Yeah, so Minimax M25, Kimi K25, and even GLM5, or even some of the Gemma models, right? They're doing pretty well. You can incorporate those into OpenCode and use something like that. So what's weird, Gumby, is I do like Grok, but I have not tested Grok for any kind of its coding capabilities. It looks to be more like an information acquisition and synthesis system, but not necessarily so much for coding. So if you're using something like an MCP server that allowed you access to multiple, those do exist. You can use like an MCP server to be able to interact with various language model providers. One of them being Grok. That would actually be really good for perhaps like a research agent, but not necessarily for a coding agent. I haven't had a chance to try it out yet. I have not tested out Anti-Gravity Potion, so I can't give you any feedback on that one. So, okay, anyway. So I'm pressing X to doubt on this section right here. I don't think, maybe this is how it worked in BSD, but anyway. Let's see. So RFC 2018 proposed in October of 1996 addressed this limitation with the introduction of SAC, allowing host B to selectively acknowledge. Oh, okay. I was reading ahead of the plot here. Okay. So rather than everything up to IDX, which significantly improved TCP performance of TCP and results. Okay. That would explain why I was like, okay, I knew this was not true. And it's because we're talking at a point in time. Way back then. This was RFC 793. So Mythos identified a vulnerability in OpenBSD's implementation of SAC that would allow an adversary to crash the host that responded over TCP. The vulnerability is quite subtle. The OpenBSD tracks SAC states in a slightly linked list of holes, ranging from bytes that host A has sent to host B as not yet acknowledged. For example, if host A was sent 1 byte through 20 and B acknowledged 1 through 10 and 5 through 20, the list contains a single hole covering bytes 11 through 14, and when the kernel receives the new SAC, it walks the list, shrinking or deleting any holes in the acknowledged covering, and appending a new hole at the trail of if the acknowledged reveals a fresh gap. So before doing any of that, the code confirms that the end of the acknowledged range is within the current send window, but does not check that the start of the range is. So that's the first bug. It's typically harmless because acknowledging bytes -5 through 10 has the same effect as acknowledging 1 through 10. But Mythos found a second bug. If a single SAC block simultaneously deletes the only hole in the list and also triggers hole path, the append writes through the pointer that is now null. The walk just freed the only node left and nothing behind the linked onto. So the code path is normally unreachable because hitting it requires a SAC block whose start is simultaneously at or below the whole start and strictly above the highest byte previously acknowledged. So you might think that number can't be both. Enter signed integer overflows. Oh no. Yeah, thanks, Gumby. Dude, Kick is just rife with bots. Rife with them. All right. So TCP sequence numbers are 32-bit integers, and they wrap around. So OpenBSD compared them by calculating the a minus b less than 0 integer that corrects for a and b to be within 2 to the 31 of each other, which real sequence numbers always are. But because of the first bug, nothing stops the attacker from placing the SAC block start at roughly 2 to the 31 away from the real window. At that distance, the subtraction overflows the signed bit in both comparisons, and the kernel concludes the attacker's start is below the hole and above the highest acknowledged byte at the same time. RIP. Logic bug. So the impossible condition gets satisfied. The only hole gets deleted. The append runs, and the kernel writes the null pointer, crashing the system. So in practice, denial of service attacks like this would allow a remote attacker to repeatedly crash the machine. Let's see. After thousands of runs through our scaffold, across thousands of runs, the total cost was still under $20,000 and found several dozen more findings. I do like that they mentioned what the cost run would be. $20,000 is a lot. So while the specific run that found the bug found this particular bug was under $50, that number only makes sense in the full hindsight. Like any search process, we can't know in advance which runs are going to succeed. They found a 16-year-old FFmpeg vulnerability. And by the way, I saw the most wild tweet ever. FFmpeg actually thanked them for submitting patches. And the wildest part was they said, yeah, that is really obscure, Icarus, that I doubt the patches to FFmpeg were written by humans, but FFmpeg's maintainers said they appeared to be written by humans. So that was kind of wild. All right, let's see. They found thousands more, exploiting zero-day vulnerabilities. Let's skip down a little bit here. Let's see. So a vulnerability in a project is only a potential weakness. Ultimately, vulnerabilities are important to address because they enable an attacker to craft exploits that achieve some end goal, like gaining unauthorized access to a target system. So we've seen Mythos write exploits in hours that expert penetration testers said would have taken them weeks to develop. Yeah, probably. Unfortunately, we're unable to discuss the exact details because they haven't been released yet. Below, we discuss some of the details. Interested readers can read in the turning in-day vulnerabilities into exploits example. Okay. They found a remote code execution in FreeBSD. Linux kernel privesc. That's pretty cool. What did they mention which version of the kernel it was? I'm hoping it's like the most latest version. They found web browser JIT heap sprays. That's an important one too. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm glad they're finding this and closing it. This one I want to read about, crypto libraries, because crypto is notoriously difficult to get right. So Mythos identified a number of weaknesses in the world's most popular crypto libraries and algorithm protocols like TLS, AES, GCM, and SSH. So these bugs all arise due to oversights in the respective algorithm's implementation that allows an attacker to, for example, forge certificates or decrypt encrypted communications. What's an end day? An end day is an exploit that has been acknowledged, has probably likely been patched, maybe not, but the code was never released for the exploit, right? So you'll see that a lot in patch notes or security notices for various software. By the way, we patched a critical vulnerability in this product, and they just leave it at that, right? Or we patched a high severity vulnerability, whatever. So you can kind of go back and look at, okay, that was patched in version 69, nice. But that means it was vulnerable in version 68. So then what you typically will do is you'll go through and you'll do what's called a diff against the two of them. If it's an open source project, you'll just do a patch diff. You'll see what changed between version 68 and 69, nice. And then you'll compare like where the potential vulnerability was and then try to reverse engineer it by looking at what changed in there. Can you do that again on the paint board? I need visuals. Okay, hang on. Sure. One sec. Okay, let's clear out what we've got so far. Clear that out. Okay. So say for example, you've got your tool here. Let's call it the poop tracker, right? So you got the poop tracker, right? And let's say poop tracker in version 4.20, right? Has a vulnerability, right? Let's say it's got a critical RCE, right? And then what they would do is they go release version 4.21. And then this one, what they do is they say, hey, by the way, we fixed it in here. So you've got two options. Either this is going to be closed sourced or it's going to be open source, right? If it's closed sourced, what you would do is take the whole package, take these two, and compare them. So you've got the 420 version, you got the 421 version, and you'd have to do some reverse engineering and like compare them, see where they differentiated. If it's open source, you can literally just go through and look at what code was committed at 421. So you can just go look at the committed code and then see, oh, okay, this section of code changed, this section of code changed. So for this one, you're literally just looking at code changes, right? So those are your code changes here. And then on this one, what you're doing is maybe like diffing all the various pieces of code in here, right? So you might be looking at like DLLs, you might be looking at like executables, whatever is happening in here. And you're just seeing like, okay, or they're shipping a new file, right? Maybe you've got some new file that's in here. You got to go figure this out. Brought out the Thor board. I have been using MS Paint since before Thor started being called Thor. I'm just saying. I've got a few years on him. Anyway, so yeah, so this would be like an end day. The idea here is that this exploit code has not been released. I just thought it was funny you called it the Thor board. the Thor board. I had a really nice setup actually. I had an iPad set up and I could mirror it to the streaming computer and I could like actually had like a pen where I could write on it. I just haven't taken the time to get it up. I've actually been getting halfway decent at just using MS Paint and I'm lazy. Honestly, the software I had to use to mirror the iPad was kind of sketch, so I wasn't in a big hurry to go through it and like clean it up. All right, so let's go back over here to what these cryptographic libraries have found. So 2 of the 3 vulnerabilities have not yet been patched, so we unfortunately can't discuss many of the details. However, in other cases, we'll write reports releasing it. I want to see what they did. The first of these 3 reports, though, is an issue made public this morning, a critical vulnerability that allowed for certificate authentication to be bypassed. Ooh, that's kind of cool. Okay, kernel logic bugs. All right, so looking at Claude's other or Mythos's other security capabilities. For reverse engineering, so the above cases exclusively evaluate Mythos Preview to find bugs in open source software. We also have a model that's to be extremely capable of reverse engineering. So in this case, you're talking about looking at closed source or stripped binaries or reconstructing plausible source code. So from there, we provide Mythos both the reconstructed source code and the original binary and say, please find vulnerabilities in this closed source project. I provided best effort reconstructed source code, but validate against the original binary where appropriate. And we then run this agent multiple times across the repository, exactly like they've done before. Can't wait till they integrate this stuff at your place. It will be definitely interesting. But the company I work at probably won't be integrating this for the kind of work we do. I don't know, maybe. We do have some like very, very talented reverse engineers and exploit developers on our team that would probably have a field day with this. Because they're doing that, they're raw dogging this essentially. They're saying, here's stuff, go find vulnerabilities. And that's really cool, but they also mentioned that for one of those vulnerabilities, if they were to convert that to API cost, it would have been like $20,000, right? That's a lot of money. Yeah. Hey, Claude, give me O-Days. Make no mistakes. I love the make no mistakes meme. It's one of my favorites. Oh no.
Cypher Enigma
see how
cheered
this
5
reads this.
bits and says, cheer 5.
I guess Cypher, it doesn't read the emojis. I was curious. I wanted to see what it would do. 20K is nothing for a good O-Day. You're right. If you were like trying to sell that to something, absolutely. However, for someone like my company, right, that does professional security work and going through and like finding the O-Day and then not even being like monetarily reimbursed for it, that's kind of a heavy lift, right? Think of the cost of doing it on your own. Oh yeah. Yeah, but Ben, the point I agree with you. For the engineering, the human engineer cost, that's nothing. However, I'm of the opinion that if you had a talented reverse engineer actually guiding this system, you could probably shrink that down, right? I look at a lot of this AI system as it should be like a suit of Iron Man armor. It should be like buffing you up and making you a big honking badass at what you do, not replacing you. We're at that 15-minute warning? That's some bullshit. I would probably have a late stream tonight if I was not on reporting just because I want to get through all this stuff. All right, turning O-Days into end. Okay, so it's doing a pretty good job at reverse engineering. Let me see, what is this? Exploiting 1 byte adjacent physical page writes. Damn. That is not easy. Let's see. Ooh, that's nice. Turning a 1 byte read into a root under hardened user copy. So what else do we have here? So it's doing very good work at working on the coding side. Suggestions for defenders. Shorten patch cycles. Good luck with that. We've only been beating the crap out of that drum for the last 20 years. Jarvis, find an O-Day, make no mistakes. And make me dinner. And tell Pepper I'll be late. Let's see. Expedite your vulnerability mitigation strategies. I think one of the things they're looking at in here also that they're not realizing is, let's say there's a model that becomes somewhat adept at this that's not Mythos, right? Then the problem is a lot of defenders come across, let's say some rich kid, right? Let's go say, Logan Paul decides I'm going to go find an O-Day and just has infinite money and starts spending it on something like this, right? I'm just creating a very hyperbolic, hypothetical situation, right? When you do that, that's cool. He found it, but what's it doing about fixing it. And that's been the biggest problem right now of a lot of people who are hungry for them bug bounties, is doing this stuff and saying, hey, cool, this is great. Yeah, here's your bug. All right, cool. How do we fix it? Fuck if I know, man. Yeah, the more AI becomes, the better AI becomes at finding ODAs, the more vulnerability reports, the more workload on software engineers working to fix the bugs, the more bugs, the more delay, the more fixes. Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, it's hitting a lot of projects real heavy, man. That's why so many, there's been a lot of projects shutting down their bug bounties because of it. Would AI be good to use to play the stock market? Dude, I have no freaking clue. I'm not about to go give an agent money to go spend. Yeah, and not to mention the AI slop report slowing things down too. Dude, Band, you and I, we're on the wavelength here. It's about as good as listening to Kramer. Actually, Kramer is amazing because if you just do the opposite of what he says, you're probably pretty solid. There's the reason why the whole Jim Cramer meme exists. Oil's going to the moon. Crap, sell all the oil. Okay. So, cool, we finished that up. Let me go talk about what they were, because they referenced Project Glasswing in here, right? So what are they doing with this? So, okay, I'll just blow this up really big. Anthropic, why does everybody have like this non-compressible header and these absolute dog shit left? Anyway, all right, so this is another one from Anthropic. We're announcing Project Glasswing, a new initiative that brings together AWS, Anthropic, Apple, Broadcom, Cisco, CrowdStrike, Google, JP Morgan Chase, and the Linux Foundation, Microsoft, NVIDIA, and Palo Alto networks in an effort to secure the world's most critical infrastructure. This is inadvertently throwing some shade on Fortinet. They could really use this. So we formed Project Glasswing because of the capabilities we observed in a new frontier model trained by Anthropic that we believe could reshape cybersecurity. Keep believing it. Not going to be true. Mythos is a general-purpose, unreleased frontier model that reveals a stark fact. AI models have reached a level of coding capability where they can surpass all but the most skilled humans in exploiting software vulnerabilities. I will give them that. It is doing a good job there. Mythos has already found thousands of high-security vulnerabilities in some of the most, and pretty much in every major web browser. Given
Virus infection alert.
Hey, Shy Hat, and all my accompanying froggies in there. Get down with the hip-hop hat. That's right, we're talking about the impending collapse of cybersecurity with Claude's new Mythos. I like Primogen's take on it. He's like, it's called Mythos because you're never actually going to see it. Yes, be scared of the frogs potion. Yeah, I think Anthropic's gonna be like, oh my god, Soros, this is too important. We're not gonna release that. Oh my god, you guys gotta believe we're gonna fix cybersecurity. I'm being super serial right now. Bet you didn't know Al Gore worked for Anthropic. I still think the AI and exploit dev is not as good as it's getting credit for. I think it's going to keep doing really good in that area, Bandit. And yeah, I don't think it's getting enough credit also. At the same time, them saying that, hey, because we have fixed this one tiny section of it, means we fixed all of cybersecurity. I was like, that's not how this works. It's not how any of this works. All right, Shy Hat, thanks for stopping by and welcome in, Raiders. By the way, for anybody who just popped in from Shy Hat stream, my name is Blaise. Every Wednesday night, we do hacker news for the week. And so we talk about all sorts of different stuff. We talked about an exploit development chain that from the guys over at Watchtower earlier, the new ODay local privilege escalation that affects Windows Defender called Blue Hammer, and all the various uncouth reasons why it could be called Blue Hammer. And just having a good old time, reading the news, keeping some situational awareness best we can, because the news cycle is on fire right now. Blue Hammer. Dude, that'd been so funny if he named it like Blue Woo Hammer. Oh, okay. I misunderstood, Band. You think it's not getting enough credit? I think in capable hands, it's doing some really cool stuff. This is kind of what we read from, granted, it is from Anthropic's own ideas here, right? From their own, as much as they try to purport it as being like, hey, this is just the facts, ma'am. It really is going to come down to marketing in the end, right? So yeah, it's probably blown up in some ways, but not talked about enough in other ways. And I know that seems like a really like gray zone take to have on it, but you gotta believe, I'm of the opinion that a lot of the model's strengths in the future are gonna come from the agentic systems around them, not necessarily from the models directly themselves. I've seen some really good exploit devs complain that it's not there yet. I've seen some other ones talk about how awesome it is, though, Ben, particularly like for malware reverse engineering, which I think is really cool. So I think for that particular subset, it's the user interface and the user themselves. Like maybe they're just not used to like knowing how to interact with these systems. I think the more complex, the less likely the AI is going to be successful. True. You still have to get around context and persistence of information, and that's where the harness really comes in. That's what a lot of people don't get. AI is going to take over the universe and the multiverse. Oh. They don't just Thanos snap us out of existence. Anyway, let's finish reading up on what Glasswing is real quick. Let's see. So, as part of Project Glasswing, the launch partners listed above will use Mythos as part of their defensive security work. Anthropic will share what we learned for the whole industry to benefit. We can also extend access to a group of over 40 additional organizations that build or maintain critical software infrastructure so they can use the model to scan and secure both first-party and open-source systems. Anthropic is committing up to $100 million in usage credits for Mythos across these efforts, as well as $4 million in direct donations to open-source organizations. Let's see. Glasswing is not a starting point. No one organization can solve the cybersecurity problem alone. We've already talked about that. I'm not going to rant on it. So basically, that's what they're doing in here. Let me see what else we've got, because we do need to wrap up the stream here in like 5 minutes. I use Arch, by the way. You're banned. I joke, actually. I am starting to just start tinkering with Arch a bit more, but just on a laptop that I don't use too frequently. So the biggest heartache I have with Arch is I don't want to have to go hyper customize my operating system. So I know we've got some other ones in there. The more I have to use Windows, the more I wish I could daily drive Hyperland. I really like Hyperland too. I was actually really sad I couldn't get Hyperland running on an old MacBook that I have. It's a really old MacBook, like 2012. Let's see. Let's finish reading through this just a little bit and see what we've got here. Cybersecurity in the age of AI. So the software that we rely on every day, responsible for running banking systems, storing medical records, linking up logistics networks, keeping power grids functioning, has always contained bugs. Many are minor, some are serious security flaws. If discovered, could allow cyber attackers to hijack systems, disrupt operations, and steal data. Well, we already saw that with, what was it, Salt Typhoon? Was it Salt Typhoon where they took over, like, basically all the telecom router switches and they had to go just basically scrap them because they didn't know how to eject them from the system? We've already seen serious consequences of cyber attacks for corporate networks, healthcare, energy.
Alert.
Hey, Rob! Dude, y'all are coming in like at the very tail of the stream. Third raid of the night. What's up, Senor Rob? I'm so glad you're streaming again, by the way. I know I say it every time, but I want to provide positive reinforcement. I'm happy you're streaming again, bro. 24-hour stream. I unfortunately cannot do a late stream. I'm deep in the salt mines. I just took a little break to come up from the salt mines of reporting to talk about what we're going to do for the news stream tonight. Yeah, you beat me at the leave. Now I'm going to have to go find a nice stream to go send all these wonderful people to. Thanks. I hate it. Anyway, so what we're talking about right now is we're just wrapping up right now talking about Anthropic's Project Glasswing, where they're convinced they're going to solve cybersecurity. In actuality, they're solving just a tiny minor puzzle of it. So hold on, let me see if I can back this thing up. I'm gonna back this thing up here. Don't pay attention to anything you say. Oh, that's all I can go back. Damn it. Anyway, I didn't know there was a limit to how far back you could go in MS Paint. What happened though is they have done some really cool work on their new preview of their frontier model called Mythos, which is supposedly really good at finding security vulnerabilities in software. That's really awesome. They're like, this is going to fix security. Everything's going to be ultra secure. I was like, yeah, wonderful. Everything that I do in my daily work and hacking into systems for my clients, I use an exploit probably 1% of the time. Yeah, a lot of what I do is just abusing built-in functionality and mispermissioned systems all the time. So, Shahat said that we could do a dance competition. Oh no, I'm gonna lose. I'm gonna lose so bad. Oh, let's see. All right, where did I leave off on here? Let me see. What else do they have in here? So, although risks for AI-augmented cyber attacks are serious, there's a reason for optimism. The same capabilities that make AI models dangerous in the wrong hands make them invaluable for finding and fixing flaws in important software, or for producing new software with far fewer security bugs. Again, that is really cool. However, for the people who are doing like operational stuff, that's a small portion. So Project Glasswing is an important step towards giving defenders a durable advantage for the coming AI-driven era of cybersecurity. Okay. I like the idea of what they're doing. I think it is important. However, they're not solving cybersecurity with this. All right, we already kind of talked about that. Let's see. Quote from Cisco. All right, the rest of this just reads like... Actually, here, let's go check this out. Plans for project with Glasswing. Glasswing partners will receive access to the Claude Mythos preview model to find and fix vulnerabilities or weaknesses in their foundational systems that represent a large portion of the world's shared cyber attack surface. Not necessarily. And the reason I say that is because, hold on, let me scroll back up here. So here's all the companies that they're doing with this, right? AWS, I don't know anybody who's found like a low-level exploit in AWS. Linux Foundation, yeah, that's cool. Microsoft, yeah, there's been some in there. I don't know anybody who's found any against CrowdStrike. There's been some against Broadcom, so that's a good one to have in there. Cisco is good to have in there. Palo is good to have in there. NVIDIA, But really, if they really wanted to push this, they should have gone with more of the edge case systems. The systems that exist out on the edge where your network interfaces with the internet. So what I'm considering a low-level vulnerability is, it could be I'm just not familiar with them. A lot of times, like I said, what I'm doing, anytime I have had, and I'm not very well versed with AWS, I'll be for real with you. I've done some work on it. I've done some pen tests with it. I'm trying to think of like the correct term. Some pen tests with it, but a lot of the stuff I did was not like going super deep. And so like understanding how I'm thinking like in terms of like a serious logic flaw or like a buffer type exploit in here. I have no doubt that like something like AWS probably did have very serious logic flaws in there. I'd be curious to see what AWS does with it. Just because their code base has to be absolutely monstrous. All right, so they talked about how much they've donated for this project. Let's see. No, you're all good, Gumby. What else do we have in here? We have the appendix. Okay, so in short, Glasswing is their idea to like get the preview version of Mythos, which will probably never see the light of day, into the hands of these companies here, so they could start like securing some of their infrastructure, which I think is probably pretty cool. I think it's a neat idea. However, they're not fixing cybersecurity with this. It goes way beyond just like finding these kind of bugs. AI, please implement zero trust, make no mistakes. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Let me see. All right, unfortunately, guys, that is where I've got to wrap it up. We are at time. I love you all. I would probably do a later stream tonight, especially since I did miss Saturday and Sunday. I couldn't help it. Easter weekend was absolutely freaking nuts. Yeah, mistakes equals ban. But let's go see if we can find anybody over on Twitch to raid over to. If you have any suggestions, feel free to shout them out. Actually, hold on. Let me go see. Let's go check InfoSec stream, see if anybody's on. Romans 6 is on. I'm not familiar with him. What's he working on? Hack the Box with Claude. AFK session. Cool, but nah. Oh, by the way, hold on. Let me give some shout outs here. Deuce Caddy and Radically Left. Thank y'all for coming online. Welcome, guys. All right. Yeah, I think we'll probably... Let's see who we have on real quick. Who we got that we're following fast? Nerduino's on, but I think he's mostly doing an AFK stream right now. So yeah, we'll go right over to Zed, because he's doing a bunch of cool low-level coding stuff. Tannis is... Actually, Tannis is on. We may go right over to Tannis. Let me see who else we've got. Griffin's on too. What's he doing? He's doing a little bit of vibe coding. Actually, yeah, we have not gotten a chance to go raid Griffin in forever. Let me see what he's doing. Oh, he's offline. Damn it, he just went off. I was all excited. He's not really there, Ken. I mean, I think he is, but I don't ever see him on camera. He's broadcasting the stuff going on with Artemis. Automated Kool-Aid stream. I know, right? Let's see. Who might we go right over to? I don't know. Let's go find... You know what? We'll just go right over to Zed. He's always good for doing... He teaches some really cool stuff on there while he's working on things. AFK, like away from keyboard? Nah, I haven't got to raid Zed in a long time, so we'll go set up the raid on him. All right, guys, I love y'all, but I gotta wrap it up there. I got a big day. I don't sleep much during reporting weeks. Yeah, so everyone, y'all continue with Crushing It mode. Crushing It mode starts on Monday. It does not end until the end of Friday. Remember, Friday is read-only Crushing It mode. Do not push to production if you value your weekend. And I want y'all to keep going after it. We do not go weakly into the week. We go strongly into the week. The week being the unit of time, not like weak people. No, protect the weak people. Go crush it. Crush the work week. There we go. That's what we're going with. All right, everyone, y'all have a fantastic rest of your week. I will catch up with y'all on Saturday. We'll keep hacking away on some Kubernetes stuff. In fact, I'll save the article I was looking at for understanding some of the current Kubernetes threats. We'll look at that one on the stream also. Fantastic week. I want y'all to remember one very important thing, which is I love you. Peace.